Okay. Hate to put you on mute, but okay. It's 3 minutes before. Who else? So it's me and you and somebody else.
it's just
Sharice and Verdell, I assume. If you guys can mute until we call on you, we can hear you. Unless you were just saying hello, that's okay too.
Is that the mayor? Who
Yes,
else? So
ma'am.
it's me and you.
it's just
Okay.
All
Hello? Okay, here we go again.
right, we can hear you, Sharice. We got you. All right.
Okay.
Good
All
evening,
right.
everyone. The time is 7 p.m. Today is Monday, June 22nd, and the Urbana City Council meeting will come to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Hello?
Councilmember Wu,
Here.
Councilmember Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Hersey,
Okay. Here.
Councilmember Jones,
all right. The time is 7 p.m. Here. Today is Monday, June.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Williams.
Here. All right, thank you. We will now move on. We have quorum. We'll touch that. Next, we'll have the approval of the minutes for May 4th, 2026, Committee of the Whole meeting, and May 11th, 2026, City Council meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Wilkins. Let's see, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. All right, the ayes have it. Those minutes stand approved. We will now move to additions to agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on. We'll now move to presentations, public input. So first, we'll have presentation for a change, adaptive reuse, and historic preservation. All right, come up to the mic, state your name, and the floor is yours.
Hi, I had sent slides. And Mayor Williams and council members, thank you for your time this evening. My name is Kate Holliday. I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I teach historic preservation. I'm hopeful that you will continue to seek information, and please reach out to commission members with questions. I also want to thank all community members who have come out to speak on behalf of the Civic Center and historic preservation. People out there care, and like me and other members of the commission are volunteering our time to come to meetings, to do research, and to write landmark nominations. Historic preservation today is not what it was 20 years ago. There are new generations coming to the table. Here in Urbana, preservation had one of its starts in the 1960s with the State Streets and efforts by community members to prevent the university from demolishing West Urbana. As the blocks of homes fell for the Krannert Performing Arts Center, they held the line at Lincoln. Most of our local landmarks are houses in that neighborhood, and that makes sense for a first-generation preservation movement. What you're seeing now and today is advocates who care about extending those conversations to things previously left out, mid-century modern architecture, African-American history, and things we have not thought of yet and we don't know about because we don't have the public's guidance. The commission is ready to do this work, to work with the public, to do public outreach, but we need to be at the table in order to do that work. So I remain incredibly concerned about misinformation and missed opportunities for communication. As I know you all are aware, this format for communication is highly artificial and makes open dialogue really, really difficult. There are growing issues of trust, and I'm really hopeful that those issues can become better. It doesn't help at all that MTD staff and city staff are calling Smile Politely to get them to change my op-eds without contacting me first. So I really want to clarify that the Historic Preservation Commission was absolutely not included in required Section 106 review process for the Urbana Civic Center. You received a memo today, which was after I submitted my slides, and that we have been involved since 2024, and that we were notified of the process in August of 2025, and this is just not true. I don't know what else to say. I think what is happening, and because I'm a volunteer, I don't have access to city data, but I think what is happening is that city staff was included in 2024. That August 2025 reference is to a note from PACA, which is a local advocacy organization, and not an official notification of any kind. I'm guessing that all of that is what's being referred to here, but that is not an invitation to participate in Section 106 review. The mitigation plans for the Civic Center were also created without involvement of the Historic Preservation Commission. And for any further questions about this, I would really ask commission members. So I also want to clarify that I've been a surveyor for Section 106 review myself. I've been a consulting party for Section 106 review previously in the past in other cases. I served on the State Board of Review for National Register programs for the Texas Historical Commission for 6 years. I served as its secretary. I served as its vice chair. I have been the holder of a National Park Service civil rights grant to do historic preservation work in Texas. I've worked with city staff in Dallas, city staff in Fort Worth. I have extensive kind of understanding of what communication looks like in this context. I know what it's like to give and receive invitations for Section 106 review. I know what those invitations to meetings look like. I know what invitations to comment look like. None of that happened here, and I want that to be really clear. Other council members have wondered why there's not been more communication between the commission and MTD, and I share that question. Part of that has to do with the lack of Section 106 review process and inclusion of the commission. Since February, there certainly has been communication. I would point to some meetings where HPC requested information and where MTD stated, as you see on the slide, we have no plans for the site. And discuss being really open for communication and collaboration and compromise. I think everyone on the commission, I can't speak for everyone except myself, but the feeling of those meetings was that we certainly took this statement at face value, and I hope it remains true. So to that point, I also want to kind of get to one other thing, which Historic Preservation Commission does not require putting a building back the way it was. That's just not the case. And there have been memos that stated that this is what historic preservation was about, and that is not the case. There are actually 4 accepted methods for dealing with a landmarked property. They are preservation, which means take the building as it is now and freeze it. There's rehabilitation, which typically means making alterations, making additions, making changes, while keeping the core of the building. There's restoration, which typically means, okay, this building was important in 1912, we'll put it back then. And then there's reconstruction, which is taking a building that is gone and putting it back, rebuilding it. I don't think there is anyone on the Historic Preservation Commission who is interested in any strategy other than rehabilitation. The idea here of rehabilitation, as you can see, is that the primary characteristics of the building have been identified in that brick facade. The characteristic of the building, that it is a brick townhouse, remains intact, and a glass box has been inserted within it. It means that the new and the old are distinguishable from each other, and you can still read the old in the context of the new. This is an accepted historic preservation strategy by the National Park Service. Just to make this clear, another kind of teaching image for talking about rehabilitation is one of these 4 strategies, in which the idea here is that historic preservation and adaptive reuse work hand in hand. It allows new additions, it allows upgrading systems, distinguishing new work from old, and there are often, depending on how you make your case, substantial tax credits available for doing projects this way. I just want to make this really clear because it feels like there's been some debate about what historic preservation is about and their choices and strategies involved. Just for a few examples here of what historic preservation is about and what this rehabilitation strategy can look like. I showed this one to you before. This is the example of the MIT Metropolitan Warehouse, which is just being completed right now, in which new windows have been cut all through the facade of a warehouse building. The rear walls were removed and glass boxes inserted within it. This was all done in collaboration between the property owner, the SHPO, and the local Historic Preservation Commission. These are substantial alterations that gave the building new life. Another example, done by a nonprofit, which I think points to the idea that there are ways of being budget conscious with these projects, which inserted entirely new HVAC, electrical, and other systems into a building that had never had them before, and achieve LEED Gold efficiency standards. So all of this is important for making decisions about the Civic Center and I think even more importantly to me, for how the city thinks about historic preservation going forward from this point. We believe in transit, we believe in collaboration, and we have just entered the conversation to all of those questions about why are you just here now? We were not included during the entire review process. There are pathways to compromise. Obviously, I advocate for historic preservation, and Landmark Society says that's my job, right? I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Commission. As council, you all have options. I would encourage you to ask for them. Ad hoc committees, new motions regarding use and reuse of the building, requiring hiring a preservation architect to look at the building, revisiting the botched Section 106 review and the resulting mitigation plan that is highly inadequate and inappropriate. All of those things are things that council has power to do. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to further conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have changing the Discord. Oh, I'm so sorry. You're absolutely correct. Grace, questions?
Yes, thank you for the presentation here. I was wondering, and I think trying to understand where the Historic Preservation Commission is standing based on previous conversations for willingness to collaborate with MTD with the kind of perceived roadblock of the something of appeal, of appraisal, what letter of Could you help me remember the process?
Sure, yeah, I mean,
Appropriateness, letter of appropriateness?
yeah, like a COA, a certificate of appropriateness. Yeah. So I think part of the issue is time pressure, lack of communication, the kind of formalized communication that makes it hard to have these kind of back and forths, and it certainly doesn't put everyone in the room at the same time. And some of the backroom communications that are undermining trust. So I can't speak again for the entire Historic Preservation Commission. My colleague Angela Urban will be speaking as well. And I know as individuals, we have all spoken to our flexibility, our desire to collaborate, our desire to think about what a rehabilitation strategy looks like. And those kind of suggestions, requests have led us to this point. Yeah.
Chris?
Kate, thanks for the presentation. You weren't at the public hearing June 3rd, correct?
No, I was not here. I did watch the recording this afternoon.
Okay. What was your understanding of the Urbana Community Development recommendation regarding landmark of the Civic Center?
So my understanding is that the recommendation is for demolition because it provides a more certain outcome for MTD. They have a blank slate to work with. I think that that's part of the communication issue that the commission has been having, is that when we are asking for what the plans are, we're often told there are no plans, or then we receive a communication saying, actually, the plan is to demolish. It makes it difficult for the commission, and certainly the public also, listening to these conversations, to know what is actually on the table. The idea that a grant application that hasn't been submitted is a certain deal is also something that I hear as someone who's been involved in these kind of processes before. And certainly a grant that has not been submitted yet has the ability to be rewritten. I wonder from my role and from communications that I've had about the predetermination of an outcome for Section 106 review rather than an open exploration of what the results actually are. There's certainly been many, many instances where Section 106 review turned up an asset, turned up something that no one had been expecting, and then plans changed. When we had a panel discussion in May that brought several historic preservation experts to town, and one of my colleagues was talking about the example of the Section 106 review for the high-speed rail corridor going through Springfield, Illinois. And as she was doing this review, what she found was the archaeological remains of one of the homes of the men attacked by a white mob during the Springfield race riots. And she advocated strongly that the entire project stop. And there's now a National Historic Landmark on that site. It cost millions of dollars, long delays. They moved and changed the design, and everyone is glad that they did. So I think when I hear we can't risk money that we don't have yet, I wonder why there isn't an ability to compromise and think about other alternatives to planning.
Do you know, since you've got this experience with landmarking and in this process of preservation, does landmarking allow, if it's determined later, allow for demolition?
So typically it doesn't. I mean, typically the point of landmarking something is that you value it and you want to keep it. There certainly have been examples of landmarks that have been demolished for all kinds of reasons. And so I think that to the one point that I hear MTD making, that landmarking and entering into a whole new process feels more uncertain than sticking with what they've already done, I think that's true. I think that's fair. It does mean that you would be entering into a new process and thinking about new questions and thinking about new approaches that you had not considered before. If you did those things and then ended up right back where you were, I think that you would have the ability to pursue the plan that appears to be perhaps currently on the table.
Do you, would the Historic Preservation Commission be willing to put in writing allowances for alterations of the building, like major alterations of the building? When you say rehabilitation, it's significant changes to that building, correct?
Yeah, rehabilitation requires all kinds of significant change. Typically in that process, there is a kind of collaborative conversation about what are the most important identifying features of this building that caused us to want to landmark it in the first place. And obviously, those are the kinds of things that you try to keep. That's what that process is like. I think that if I go back here and look at this example, all of those circular windows are new. All of those big glass square windows are new. The entire back of the building has had more than 75% removed to create new interior spaces on the inside. And yet, at the same time, you can still see that original building intact, right? And the piece there, I can speak for myself. I know that me, as a member of the Landmarks Commission, the Preservation Commission, excuse me, would be more than happy to try to write a memo to the effect of what that collaborative process might look like. And we'd be more than happy to enter in that conversation.
Last question, Mayor. Did you take a tour of the Civic Center?
I did. I was very thankful to have that opportunity.
What was your assessment of the building?
So
based on your expertise?
Based on my expertise, I have been in a lot of really rough buildings, and this building looks fine to me. I've been in buildings that are filled with molds, with the ceilings caving in, water dripping in, floors covered in debris, filled with trash, very much vandalized by neighborhood members, and those buildings have come back to life just fine. I think that folks who work in historic preservation are used to looking at buildings that have been empty and re-envisioning what they might look like in the future. And that's, I think, a little bit different than, like if you're looking for a house and you walk to a house that's really rough, you don't want anything to do with that, right? You're like, someone else can take on that project. But as a historic preservation person working especially on institutional scale buildings, they're often empty and rough. And need an architect who actually thinks about those kind of issues to be a part of the conversation in order to understand what the scope of work is that needs to be done. To me, the building looks like one that needs some new systems, and could use a new roof, obviously, but otherwise it's in great shape.
Verdell or Sharice, are there any questions?
Yes, I have one, if I could talk real quick.
Go for it.
Yes. First off, thank you for coming and giving this presentation. I'm deeply sorry that I cannot be there in person. But I do have one quick question. I just wanted to get an understanding. You were saying that the communication with the city has not been good. Who in particular have you been in contact with or try to contact with the city that you feel has not communicated very well with you?
So I don't think it's an issue of individuals. I think it's an issue of the structure of communication. So typically a Section 106 notification looks like a letter from the consultant directly to everyone who's a named consulting party. No one on the commission received that kind of notification. I don't know what the filter was that prevented that coming through. I don't know if that's city. I don't know if that's MTD. I don't know if that's the consultant not doing a great job. I actually can't really speculate about that because I don't have access to that data. But I would encourage all of you to try to wonder about that. I do think currently that the cross communication that we have about historic preservation policy and whether or not Section 106 review included the Historic Preservation Commission is not helpful in the way that the commission is trying to go about being forthright with the public, with each other, and with council. And so I think that is something that has certainly been an issue.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question. So in your line of work, have you come across other city-owned properties that are looking to be landmarked and saved that's very similar to Civic Center, or is this your first incident?
This is not my first incident, and I think the biggest thing happening right now is the city of Dallas has been trying to demolish its Dallas City Hall. which was designed by Ian Pei, who's quite a well-known architect, and the building is quite famous around the world because the Dallas Mavericks were interested in using this site for a basketball arena. So it's actually quite a similar kind of situation where community has come together to ask the city to value a landmark that was important to them. There seems to be a movement in that case away from demolishing Dallas City Hall and towards the Mavericks going to a different location. There's certainly been other issues surrounding City Hall buildings and other properties owned by cities that I've worked with, absolutely.
Okay, so have you ever, let me ask you this question. Have you ever come across a situation where they're trying to take down a city-owned building and put in another, as MTD is trying to do, another service for the community? I don't see the Dallas Mavericks as truly being the service. I see more as entertainment. So I was wondering, have you ever come across where the city is trying to tear down one of their own buildings to implement another building or service that could benefit the city as a whole?
Yeah, I think the most common way I've seen this, and this is not with my personal involvement, but with me kind of being an observer of historic preservation in general, the most common thing that happens is a city hall is torn down to build another city hall on top of it. Or a city hall is torn down to make way for another civic service. A courthouse is torn down to make way for another courthouse. Those things do happen. And there are always these kind of conversations as to what does the city value? Where's the real estate that's available? Where's the investment coming from for the redevelopment? Those are all the same kind of questions that are on the table here. And I know they're hard. I'm not here to tell you this is a really easy conversation, but I do really want council to be well informed as you're making this decision. And it feels like that has been very, very hard at this point to make sure that council has good information so that you can be making the decisions that you want to make.
Well, I appreciate that. That's all for me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Verdell. Sharice?
Yes, I do have some questions, well, at least one.
Go for it.
So if in fact, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm not correct about this, is that if something gets a landmark status, anything that happens to that building afterwards, whether it be rehabilitation or and this is just from what I've been reading, whatever, it all has to go through this whole process of approval or appropriateness. Is that true?
Major changes would need a COA, yes.
Okay, so in the meantime, my question becomes this. What's the price tag on that and who's responsible?
So that's a great
for
question.
keeping this building?
Yeah, so I think at this point, the question is we don't know the price tag of rehabilitation for the Civic Center because that question hasn't been asked during the study process. I am not privy to the information that council has, and so I don't know as much as you all do about MTD's plans. Again, MTD came to us and said they have no plans. They had nothing to share with us to show what they were working on. So my understanding of the process is somewhat based on that. And I do know that there has not been a preservation architect involved in conversations about the building that would be able to do estimates. I know that some of the estimates that have been shared are based on the idea of like putting the building back the way it was. So replacing curtains or fixing a system that's already in the building. And that is certainly not what anyone is looking to do. Any new estimate would have to come from scratch. I think that the numbers out there for a rehabilitation approach just don't exist.
Okay, so what are you looking to do if you're not looking to restore it to be what it used to be?
So the rehabilitation approach means that you can change the building and make additions. And that the whole point is to pursue an adaptive reuse strategy that would take the existing structure, change it to suit a new purpose. Rehabilitation, as opposed to other approaches to historic preservation, specifically is about recognizing that in order to save some buildings, we have to really change them. In the case of this warehouse, the windows were too small for natural daylighting. The windows were too small for required egress. And so we needed larger windows. And so the idea that the Historic Preservation Commission and the architects engaged in was, how do we create new window openings that let us still see the old ones, but that also let us get all of that natural light egress window opening that we need that's not in the old building. That's one example. Opening up a facade that had no windows at all. This image on the top left that has all of those circles with the bricks removed. That's a wall that had no windows. And the decision there was made, well, we need windows. We need natural light in this part of the building. But let's not put in tiny square windows because that makes it look like we're trying to imitate the old one. Let's put in circular ones because then we can tell these are new. The whole idea in rehabilitation is to make the building do something it didn't used to do and to change. And I think this is one of the things about historic preservation is it's actually quite open to change, but it does require collaboration. It's not the same thing as wiping a site clean and just putting up a box. It does require talking, conversation, and compromise.
So you don't have any kind of plan or any kind of foresight as far as what the building could be used for with the rehabilitation and reuse. You don't know how much it would cost or who would be paying for it. And you haven't really talked to MTD about what their plans are, or you don't know, you're assuming that we do, about what their plan is. My understanding is that Terminus plan has been something that I know since I've been on city council has been discussed at least once, at least the first 4 years that I was on city council. So I'm just trying to understand the logic. Other than historic preservation, otherwise the building would stand as it is and it'll until it falls down, I suppose. That's the other option, is what I got from what I was reading.
I think what the Historic Preservation Commission is interested in is a compromise that would allow the building to be pursue rehabilitation in tandem with the MTD's development of the site. The Historic Preservation Commission would ask for some opportunity for a proper evaluation of the building to be done and the site to be done that actually includes preservation as a part of the possibilities and options in the menu on the table. It appears that none of the work that's been done to this point included that as an option. No one wants the building to be an event center standing by itself again. Everyone wants it to be part of rehabilitation and redevelopment of the site.
Oh, okay. So one other question, and then I'm done. If you bear with me. So the Preservation Commission applied for this without the knowledge or permission, so to speak, of the city itself, correct?
So the Historic Preservation Commission did not apply for landmark status. A member of the Urbana community brought the landmark nomination to the Historic Preservation Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission's charge is to evaluate that nomination and determine whether or not it meets the criteria. We met, I was actually not at that meeting because I was out of town for that one as well, but the Historic Preservation Commission met, read the nomination, determined that it did meet the criteria that it needed to meet landmark status, and voted to approve that nomination. Because the building is owned by the city, it requires that nomination come to City Council for approval.
Okay, so my other question is that if somebody from the community determined that my garage is a historic preservation site, they can just go ahead and apply for my stuff to be made into a historic preservation without my knowledge or my permission?
The short answer to that is yes. The way the ordinance in Urbana is written is that the consent of the property owner is not required for a member of the community to forward a landmark nomination to the Historic Preservation Commission. Typically, that doesn't happen. It happens most often when the building is owned not by a private individual, but when it is owned by a public entity or an institution of some kind. I've never heard of the case of like a neighbor getting into dispute with another neighbor and like nominating their house to be a landmark against the consent. I've literally never heard an ordinance being used in that way. The ordinance is written in that way, probably specifically for cases like the one that you have right now, where there is an intent of the public to try to have input into a process that has to do with public property. And so it is an unusual case. It's not typical for landmark nominations to come through without the consent of the property owner, but because in this case it is the city, a public entity, that's the process here. I was a part of a landmark nomination for the First Presbyterian Church, in which the church was the one that wanted the nomination. We worked to fill out the form together and brought it in. It's a completely different process than one in which it is a publicly owned building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sharice. All right, Mary Alice.
I want to try and make this really quick. You had mentioned that the MTD on February 18th made a comment that they had no plans for the site. Was that at a meeting? Was that in a letter? How was that communicated?
That was at the Historic Preservation Commission special meeting that was held February 18th, and there is a recording of that.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no further questions, thank you again for the presentation. All right, next we have changing the Discord collaborative and adaptive reuse. Councilmember Evans, if you want to call up whoever.
The presentation for this will be Professor Joseph Altschuler. And Professor, you have the floor, sir, when you get set up. Make sure your green light is on that mic and try to talk closely to the microphone.
Can you hear me? All right. Okay. Good idea. All right. So let's see if we can get this full screen. All right. Good evening, Mayor Williams, members of council, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I just, for clarity for the public, I am not connected to the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm not affiliated with the MTD. I am an independent resident of Urbana who's concerned about this issue. And I'm also trained as an architect and a professor of architecture with over a decade of experience thinking, learning, and practicing in the realm of adaptive reuse. And I want to just take a moment tonight to provide a little bit more clarity about what adaptive reuse is, about the possibilities before us, and to invite us all together to think creatively about how we can achieve a win-win situation. Or to use the word that Councilmember Wilkins used last week, that like compromise is possible here, and that we should avoid this kind of false opposition of that this is a sort of fight between historic preservation and providing a necessary service of public transportation that our city needs and deserves. We can have both. It is true that, as some of you may know, in fall of 2025, I, in my role as an academic, I taught a studio and I partnered with both the city and the MTD, where I challenged students to think about how the existing Urbana Civic Center could be incorporated as part of a future plan for a bus station, for a transit hub, in the way that the MTD is envisioning. And I'm so appreciative of both the city and the MTD for partnering us with the studio, and for the city for letting us tour the building and think about possibilities. But tonight, I'm not here to share student ideas, but rather, I'm here, again, as an architect, as a concerned citizen, to think creatively together about what's possible. And there's just 1 ounce of history that I know many of you know, but I think is worth repeating. When the Urbana Civic Center was built, when it opened in 1970, it was intended to be just one part of a bigger complex. It was one part of a bigger complex that was never built, and that would have new building additions that would have been connected and integral as part of a cohesive building. And there were multiple plans, multiple schemes. This is the one that's most published and available as part of the Urbana Civic Center Master Plan. But I also had the pleasure of visiting Kim Smith, who's the daughter of the architect, Del Smith, at her home, and she generously sort of shared some of the archives of Smith Seton Olak architects. And it included some alternate schemes, some other options. And I was particularly excited to see one of the options actually, I think, would be in line with what may be kind of possible, at least in a kind of strategic way, where the existing building could be connected to a building to the east, now in the sort of city-owned parking lot as part of a broader structure. This would be kind of the section looking north. But what I want to spend most of my time tonight is to look very closely at the site, to think clearly about the dimensions and about the possibilities, to think about compromise, and to think about gradations of possibilities. That if we all work together, and I realize, maybe things haven't gone exactly according to best practice to date, but I think there's a beautiful opportunity for us to bring many stakeholders to the table, the MTD, the Historic Preservation Commission, the city, to think about what's possible. This is the site as it stands. There's a park, the blue line is the full extent of the site. There is parking lots both to the east and to the west, and as you can see to the east, a pretty large and substantial parking lot. The total site area is about 82,000 square feet. The Civic Center, as it currently stands, is occupies about 8,394 square feet of floor area. That's actually only 10% of the total site. 90% of the site is open area. It's true that the Civic Center does have this kind of pinch point, which you can see up here, 33 feet between the sort of north edge of the building and the edge of the property, which goes towards the H Mart parking lot. And this pinch point is, I think, fairly, as the MTD has assessed in their memo to City Council on June 15th, this is one of the major constraints in thinking about routing sort of buses through this property in a future bus scenario. Certainly, I think sort of step one in thinking about a creative adaptive reuse of this site would be the partial demolition of that kitchen annex, which doubles the sort of clearance between the north edge of the building and the north edge of the property to 66 feet. As I'll show, I think this is sufficient to position a sort of bus driveway with adequate lanes and the sort of saw-cut parking that is best practices to the MTD. I know the MTD is a little, uncertain about that. In their memo, they say even with this kitchen annex removed, there still isn't the possibility. And I think there are still other creative ways that we can keep some of the substantial structure intact and even recede some of the rear wall further. Partial demolition can be part of adaptive reuse and absolutely can be something that a certificate of appropriateness, if the building is granted landmark status, could support, to up to 76 feet of clearance. So let's look at some possibilities. Councilmember Hersey asked, what could this look like? Let's look at this. And this is my own analysis. This is not student work. This is my own analysis of how I think the site could be configured. And this is not a design. This is just sort of diagrams and sort of carefully measured ideas about how we could begin to think about the site in a creative way to meet both the MTD's needs and to reuse the building that is not only unique and historically significant per 5 of 7 criteria according to the Historic Preservation Commission, but also something that could enhance a future bus station, to make a bus station that's more than a bus station than perhaps we typically think of, but something that can be also a sense of place. And that honestly will fulfill the original building's sort of ambition of just being a kind of lobby or entry area for a bigger building. Or in the language of a bus station, a waiting area for customers with supports. So one option is to build a new building to the west, to connect it through a sort of bridge or corridor to the existing building. You can see the sort of 2 lanes and the saw-cut parking for the MTD buses that lines around the property for up to 12 or 13 buses. But there are other options too that expand the square footage. We could do a sort of wrapping strategy where building could be added to both the east and west of the existing building to create a cohesive, unified interior with a new structure. Or even what I'm calling encapsulate, which is to surround the entire building on the south side with new structure to create a sizable footprint and up to 62,000 square feet with 3 floors of space. And I'll show you this in 3 dimensions as well. But for reference, I also just want to show you, for scale reference, the Illinois Terminal in downtown Champaign. That's the footprint of the Illinois Terminal. So there's space to work with here. Are there constraints? Is there complexity to adaptive reuse? Absolutely. And should the MTD and the city kind of do further exploration with architects and engineers who are trained in this work, and it ultimately is proved that this can't happen? Well, I think that's something that even in my optimistic view that it can be reused, I can accept. But what I'm asking us all, and what I'm asking you as city council, and with the power to change the narrative and sort of the direction and due process around this project, to think about what's possible. So this is sort of the footprint of the Illinois terminal for scale, sort of superimposed on my sort of best estimate drawn approximation of, I think, what the MTD has in mind based on conversations that we had with the students. So let's look at this in 3 dimensions, and then I can open things up for questions. So here's the existing condition. You can see the parking lots, the sort of expansive parking lots on the east and west. You can see H Mart to the north. The sort of bubble in the front is the Bennett Administration Building. So first, this idea of bridging. So we can build a 3-story building immediately to the east, and we can connect through a bridge or a corridor to the existing building. Alternatively, I think there's even an option where we open up the walls of the existing building and we think of the existing civic center as a kind of outdoor pavilion waiting space shelter. But of course, I think in some of the MTD's plans, there's visions to think even about square footage for lots of other services. So this is where we go into option 2, the sort of wrapping idea, where a building can surround on east and west sides of the existing building that can connect to a larger 3-story building to the east. If you need still more square footage, we can keep building. And again, these aren't designs so much as sort of diagrams, carefully measured diagrams to scale that show sort of buildable area, that show massings and show how the existing building can be incorporated. Again, not just as a kind of token to historic preservation, but as something that can truly add design value, vision, and enhancement for a kind of destination in downtown Urbana that's second to none. Maybe even the building starts to encapsulate from the outside some of those pyramids, where only 2 may be visible from the outside, or where new building even sort of circles around the front. So I'm just about out of time here, but I want to end with an invitation to collaborate. I'm not here to just to finish my sentence. I'm not here to kind of litigate miscommunications or things that have happened before, but rather to say, to all of you as fellow Urbanaites, let's figure out a way to bring everyone to the table to do our due diligence of what's really possible, because demolition is forever. And last thing I want to say is this room itself, I would argue, is a kind of temple to adaptive reuse. We have 2 images on the wall behind us, 2 photographs, one of the Champaign County Courthouse historically, and one of it being adaptively reused.
All right, Joseph, I was going to say you're going over your time, brother.
All right.
I appreciate it. I'm joking with you. Appreciate the presentation. Are there any questions for Joseph? Grace.
Thank you so much for the presentation and putting together those diagrams. Helps visualize there. In the context that there aren't any specific site plans, also want to acknowledge the plan for site versus site plans may also be confusing language.
Sure.
If it didn't need to be as large, because it seems like there's not the Amtrak train going through it compared to the Illinois terminal. MTD has expressed that they don't want to run an event space, so if it needed to be smaller, could they incorporate parking in there? Just notice that there's not parking in any of these designs.
Yeah, I mean, short answer is absolutely. I mean, the reason I didn't put parking in these plans is based on my conversations I've had with MTD. I don't think that's not part of the vision that based on the conversations I've had, but certainly there's so much possibilities. And yes, if there was less square footage filling the site, certainly a small parking could be incorporated.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? James.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the conversation earlier today. I do want to ask a question about this building. In adaptive reuse, in your experience for a building built in 1970,
Yes.
what's the likelihood of there being a major asbestos mitigation requirement with the building as it stands? Seeing as 1974 was the peak of asbestos use for building material.
I am not specifically aware of that being an issue in this building. and I can't give you a statistic of how likely it is or not, but that's certainly something that would have to be considered.
And from your experience in those situations where that becomes an issue, what does that do to the cost of the reuse project?
Certainly, if asbestos mitigation is part of a project, that does add cost to a project.
That's something we should know, right?
Yeah, it's something we should know, for sure.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Chris?
Thank you for the presentation. This is what I've been waiting for some time, this kind of conversation on so many other kinds of projects, but this kind of design possibilities and options and things. Thank you for doing this. What was the MTD's role in your class and in your, how much participation did the MTD have?
Sure, thanks for that question. So in the summer before teaching the fall studio last year, I reached out to the MTD to tell them about my vision for the studio and to ask them if they would participate as a partner, a sort of learning partner along the way. And it's my goal, again, today was not student work. That was not the goal of tonight's presentation. But when we did this studio at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, the goal was to think about how to, on one hand, have the students learn from the MTD, to learn some of the logistics, some of the traffic engineering, some of the sort of operational, frankly, to learn from their operational expertise. The MTD is a public transit authority at the top of their game, and I wanted my students to learn from their expertise. And at the same time, I wanted the students to contribute to the MTD's imagination. The MTD doesn't have, as far as I'm aware, architectural designers on staff. And so I pitched to the MTD that the studio would be an opportunity to think about how a bus station can do more than a bus station, how it can contribute to public life and civic life. And certainly I think the adaptive reuse is part of that. They had, when I approached them, they, had not considered adaptive reuse at all. That was totally not on their radar. And I think we were both frank with each other. They told me at that time that they didn't, adaptive reuse was not part of their plan. But I think, and I know they're going to speak tonight, and I'm happy to see them here. I think they were excited about the possibility of students adding to the creative imagination of a future bus station. And so one part of it was thinking about adaptive reuse, but probably the even more important part was thinking about how we can amplify a bus station in downtown Urbana to do more than only meet the requirements of public transit, but also contribute to public and civic life. And so they participated, they interfaced with students, I think, 3 times throughout the semester, at the beginning, middle, and end, to sort of give the students a charge, and then to be design critics, to offer critique, questions, and criticisms at sort of the 50% design milestone, and at the 100% design milestone at the end of the semester.
Did the MTD ever say, hey, look, would you guys stop? We're knocking that building down.
I mean, the MTD was clear that they were not that adaptive reuse was not their top priority. And I think I really appreciated that they were still interested in the studio. And yes, I think one part of me, perhaps this is naive, but I think one part of me hoped that that the students' ideas would help convince them to sort of reconsider reuse as part of their strategy. And they certainly said they were open to thinking about it. And I appreciate their open-mindedness.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Sharice Verdell.
Yes, if I could have the floor for a second.
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Yes, first and foremost, thank you very much for this presentation. I loved the visuals, being able to see what your guys' ideas are. And I definitely applaud you for getting your students involved. I think this is a great way that we can get a lot of issues done is by using some of our young, smart brains, especially from the U of I, to help move this along. But with that being said, when you were doing your designs, whether it's you or your students, and your thoughts of different reuse models, do you guys do this under a certain budget, or is this kind of just an open-ended, imaginative process?
No, I mean, that's a great question. And again, part of the reason I didn't show student work tonight, and the students, in my humble opinion, had some amazing ideas, But part of the reason I didn't show student work tonight is because part of my role as an educator is to encourage and to nurture students to think outside the box, to be speculative, and to expand what is even thinkable. And that's a really important kind of learning goal of the studio that I was teaching at an undergraduate level. This was not an advanced studio, this was an undergraduate studio. And one of my first and foremost learning goals is helping my students become creative, speculative thinkers. And I think one of the reasons I didn't show that work today is because, no, budget was not part of that conversation. And some of the students had some rather wild and not particularly practical ideas, which I think is not particularly helpful for us today when we have a very practical matter at hand, and a practical matter that I want us all to take seriously. So I think the students' conversation, I think, informs a broader ethos of partnership and possibilities that we could still initiate here as a city. But ultimately is, the diagrams I'm showing today is trying to think like more specifically about the dimensional constraints, about the flexibility of, and to demonstrate how flexible adaptive reuse can be to incorporate an old thing into a completely brand new thing.
Yes, and I definitely appreciate that outlook, especially with your students, pushing that innovative mind. But I also think that it's important, when we deal with real world situations, especially this situation where it's a city-owned building, and finances do have some constraints on what we can do, that, ideas put forth have to have that in mind. Because, we can make up ideas about what it could be all day, but we also have a certain budget that has to be met. And so that's one of my issues with this is just, great ideas, beautiful visuals, but what is it going to cost? And I think that go ahead.
No, I think that's a really important constraint. And I'm just saying, I don't think anybody in this room today really has the information to answer that yet. And I think that's part of the reason I'm here today is to say that we deserve to know that. There has not, as far as I'm aware, and, I never want to, I'm sure there are things that happen that I don't know about, but as far as I'm aware, there has not been the procurement of professional services that would actually tell us how much it would cost, and if in fact there is a truly substantial difference in adaptively reusing a building versus building a new one. We don't have that information, and so I think we want to do our due diligence to actually know. And if the day came where we really knew that it was cost prohibitive to adaptively reuse the building, that would be one thing. But we're not there yet. We don't have that information, and I think that's something that the citizens of Urbana and everyone who's served by the system deserves to know. I think that's what we want to do our due diligence to find out.
Yes, absolutely. But I do think we have an idea of how much the grant is willing to fund. And so I would have liked to see some more of the actual financial numbers included with your designs. But outside of that, thank you very much.
Well, one thing I can say to that is the diagrams that I showed today are in keeping with the sort of number of floors and the sort of very ballpark square footage of what the MTD has discussed and spoken about. And so in that sense, we know that we're in the right order of magnitude, at least, based on sort of cost per square foot.
All right.
Yeah, but my question would be with the adaptive reuse, what is it going to cost to keep the current Civic Center and keep it up to code and get everything working along with building the additional building? That's just kind of what I'm wondering right now.
And I think it's just important, again, to state that what's being proposed here is not bringing the existing Civic Center up to code, and it's not repairing its systems, but it's incorporating it almost like an ingredient in a new dish, to use a food analogy. And in that sense, the cost estimates to repair the building or to, quote, bring it up to code are not, I would say, particularly helpful when thinking about it as one piece of a much more complex and frankly brand new puzzle of a $32 million transit center in downtown Urbana. The cost to repair anything in it is not, I think, a helpful metric to understand the complexity and the true kind of vision of adaptive reuse, of creating a brand new thing.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mary Alice.
I was hoping you could just run down some numbers for me. So the current Civic Center actual square footage, was it 3,800?
Let's go back.
38.
The
8,000.
the current Civic Center is just over 8,000 square feet.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, thank you. And the open area is 73, sorry.
The open area is
73,000.
73,000 square
Okay,
feet
and
for a
then
total site area of about 82,000 square feet.
Okay, and then the footprint of the Champaign terminal?
The footprint of the Champaign one is here. At ground floor, it's like just under 15,000 square feet, but it's a 4-story building, so
Okay.
multiply
All right.
that.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, Sharice, did you have anything?
No, I don't have anything right now.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak.
All right, next we will have MTD, Downtown Urbana Transit Facility, and it's, I believe we have both Carl and Ashley from MTD presenting.
Excuse me, good evening. I am Carl Gannett, the Managing Director of the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District. To those of you I know, hello, and to those of you I don't know, hi, nice to meet you. I don't have a presentation, so I have no slides to show you. We're here to just give our perspective on this because there have been some people speaking for us and speaking about us, and we haven't really had an opportunity to really directly, certainly to you, to give our perspective. So we appreciate the opportunity to do that. It's been said a couple times that we don't have plans, and it's kind of funny until you start hearing somebody say a word over and over again. You suddenly realize that their use of the word is different than your use of the word. And so we were asked for plans, and we've assumed that they meant drawings, architectural plans. We don't have any. And we said we don't have any, and we've never had any. Do we have plans like concepts? Yes, and we have been very clear about what those were. Ashley has appeared in front of the commission. There have been newspaper articles about it. We've talked about it at our board meetings, which are public meetings, and on our website. And so if they're asking for concepts, plans, we've given them. If they're asking for architectural drawings, we don't have them to give. So I just want to state that. And I want to get to the aspect of communication too. So hopefully somebody asks me a question about that, because I need to move on, or I'm going to start getting beeped. We have been operating in downtown Urbana since nearly the district's formation, and we just have on-street transferring. It is not a good look for Urbana. It's not a good look for MTD. It's not good for our passengers, and we have long wanted to improve those circumstances and the amenities for our riders. And so we want to build a building. We want to have a facility that is off-street transferring, which improves accessibility and safety. And we want to improve our operational conditions so that we can be more efficient with our service. We, of course, want to be centrally located in downtown Urbana because that benefits our riders, but it also benefits downtown Urbana and Urbana as a whole. We want to have indoor transit, waiting areas, restrooms, vending areas, customer service, that kind of thing. And I'm trying to jump through some things here to not take up too much time. So we've been working with the city, 3 different administrations for about 13 to 14 years on finding locations. And we have vetted downtown Urbana thoroughly, And the previous administration brought this location, the Civic Center, to us as a potential, and it checked all the boxes of what we were trying to do and trying to fit into a transfer facility for MTD. And so we did start focusing on that, and just for the record, all three administrations have been great, including this one. Maybe especially this one. All right. So we, we're not opposed to preservation, but we are being told by the consultants that we have that leaving that building where it is prevents us from accomplishing some of our goals. We can't use sawtooth bus bays, which Professor Altshuler had a drawing of, but he didn't accommodate 60-foot buses, and some of our buses are the long 60-foot articulated buses. They're not all 40-foot standard buses, and so we need to be able to accommodate a mixed fleet size. We also have to have a location for layover buses. These are buses that park on property. You can see them on Water Street now if you go out there, maybe not right this exact moment, but go out there tomorrow during the day and you'll see we have buses parked on Water Street in layover. They go out and they provide relief for buses that are running behind schedule and that kind of thing. And so we have requirements. We are working with the Urbana School District and moving their central office to this location. They have size requirements, and I'm not going to be able to quote what those are off the top of my head, but they have their plan is to move all their employees there. And so that takes space, and we are trying to have a consolidated form of amenities so that our passengers can freely flow from bus to bus to make their transfers. And so the site works, the building gets in the way. It gets in the way of building office space for District 116, and it gets in the way of us fitting all the buses we need on site, and it has circulation problems for our vehicles. I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about our reaction to when the Historic Preservation Commission started getting involved with this. We decided to pause our activities because we wanted to respect the city and the arm of the city that is the Historic Preservation Commission that is talking about this. And so we missed a grant opportunity because of the pause. I want to say for the record, that's not a threat. That's just we don't want to damage the credibility of the Mass Transit District with our funding partners. I think the city would have the same perspective, that they don't want to damage their credibility with their funding partners. And so that's all we were doing. But we wanted to give the commission time to have this conversation out. Our pause has been twisted a bit in public discourse, which is unfortunate, but I guess that's how it goes with public discourse. But we are we're totally willing to talk about respecting this building. I think if you look at what we built in downtown Champaign and you look at Illinois Terminal, that building is architecturally sensitive to downtown Champaign and the buildings immediately surrounding it. We care about that. We want to have that conversation. We really enjoyed some of most of the student presentations that the professor was talking about, and there are elements of those that we want to take and consider, and we think that we can make a building that everybody on the Historic Preservation Commission and the council and our board and everybody involved in this community can be proud of. That's a goal of MTD. But we need to prioritize our service and how it functions on the site for our passengers. that is our priority. I mean, I'm just being honest with you that historic preservation is not our priority. We're willing to have the conversation. We want to work with people, but if we're locked into a landmark designation, I told you already that we've been working on this for 13 years. We just push that into a longer timeline. Never mind the expense that comes along with that. So I would, so I'll just leave it at that. It is our goal to have a building that everybody loves and that respects the history of Del Smith and the work that he did. By the way, Kim Smith used to be an MTD board member. We have a good relationship with her, and we respect her and her family. I'll leave it at that.
All right, Ashley, got a minute 30 if you have anything. Fill in the time.
I'm good. I think we can just save some time for questions.
Right. Thank you. All right, James.
All right, thank you for the presentation. I feel like I have to disclose that you're my constituent as we have this conversation, because you are an Urbana resident too, right?
Correct.
So you mentioned the Urbana School District in the conversation about being the new home, potentially, of their administrative offices. What has the discussion been about parking? You heard parking brought up earlier. Is that something that you have to accommodate in this plan, or did you have other ways that you thought that would come about?
Well, that certainly would need to be addressed with this project. Moving that many people in that area, that is a question that needs to be answered. There is a fair amount of parking around the area in downtown, and so that could be an option. But if it isn't, then there may be a need to accommodate parking within the structure and on that site. As I mentioned, we don't have plans yet, drawings, and so we haven't done that work yet, and that would have to be done in coordination with the school district.
For the Champaign Transit Center, how much parking is there for the offices that are on like the second and third floor of that building? Did you incorporate a certain number of spaces in that design? Or is that different because of the demands for parking because of the train station?
It is, and it does, and it is. We do have long-term parking for Amtrak. We do have tenant parking. We own the lot on the east side of the railroad tracks, and then the city of Champaign actually owns the lot on the west side of Illinois Terminal. The front lot, lots of people think that we own that, and it's a part of the building, but that's actually a city-owned lot. But all of that parking is available there for day parkers, and then we've got the banquet center on the fourth floor, and so in the evening, users of the banquet facility will park on both sides.
So your tenant parkers park on the east side of the tracks too?
Most of them, although there are some spots on the west side that are reserved for Subway customers, Subway sandwich
And I
customers.
think I may have heard this in a public meeting, but maybe not, that in this particular design, you're not looking to have an event space that you would operate,
Event space?
like there is in downtown Champaign.
No, that's not currently something that MTD is contemplating.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any more questions? Mary Alice.
I have a question.
I'll come right back to you, Sharice. Mary Alice.
Hi, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming and talking with us today. I'm curious, you said that you had an architect say that the current construction of the building would not be available for you to be able to have what your needs are. Is that right? I just want to confirm that the current structure of the building doesn't allow you to build what you would need to build for the turn radius and for the parking, et cetera.
Yeah, we hired a consulting firm called HDR. It's a national firm, and they are an architectural and engineering firm. And we hired them to not to design the building or to create drawings, but to complete the NEPA process, the National Environmental Protection Act review, of which, by the way, Section 106 is a piece of, but it's not the entirety of what is encompassed by a NEPA review. So this firm did that, and in that process, they do some evaluation without designing a space. They do some evaluation of footprint analysis, and how they have a lot of transit experience, and so they understand and worked with us on what circulation would be like and that kind of thing.
Was there any conversation in terms of using part of the building instead of all of the building in that analysis?
I don't know that we had that specific conversation.
No, I think the answer to that is no. They, as part of the NEPA analysis and the Section 106 process, they did evaluate the existing building as it currently stands without considering any demolition. And so that's part of their assessment, although we've also been in conversation with them because there were conversations about just popping off that back piece, that northernmost piece. So they did some additional measuring and a little bit of minor analysis to see if that would allow for the circulation needed. Again, they're not the architects of record, and they haven't been hired to do that work explicitly. They just advised on measurements and what the recommended measurements are through the American Public Transportation Association and the National Highways Association, all the different kind of design standards that are at play here for transit facilities. They referred to those measurements when giving us that advice.
So kind of perhaps thinking outside of the box a little bit, let's for now pretend that the Civic Center where it now stands is gone. Has MTD discussed taking components potentially of the building and incorporating them in kind of a welcome area? Or I'm just wondering if you guys have thought about that possibility.
We have thought about it, we have talked about it, and I think we would have a willingness to contemplate that. Taking pieces of the building, most people would agree that the most prominent or worthwhile element to the building, not saying it's the only one, but the most one is the interior of the roof, I don't know if cupola is the right term, but the pyramidal structure, the wood planks that are in there. I'm sure all the architects in the room are cringing right now. Taking that wood down and restoring it and preserving it and then storing it, there's a cost associated with that. And so, we'd have to talk to the city about who's funding that, but we very much would be willing to have that conversation. And if that activity is undertaken, then I think we'd figure out a way to use that.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, Sharice, go for it. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, yeah. My question is basically when, let's just say, the terminus gets built downtown in Urbana, and are you also going to be keeping your building on University Avenue for the buses to go get fuel and all that stuff? Also, the other thing is that I know you guys have solar panels on the roof of that building. Will any of that kind of sustainability, sustaining type of stuff be incorporated on the building downtown?
Well, we love sustainability. We're ISO 14001 certified, so that's something that we take very, very seriously. You probably are aware that we operate hydrogen fuel cell electric buses, and that we produce our hydrogen on site that is solar powered, so it truly is zero emission. And if you really want to get me started on this, I can spend a lot of time on sustainability. So yes, we love that, and we would very much like to accommodate that in every facility that we own and operate. As I said, we haven't done any actual design work yet for this building, so I can't sit here and tell you that we would do A, B, or C, but we would look at doing all of A, B, and C if we could, and what other elements we'd be able to apply.
Let me just add, though, that we would keep our 1101 East University facility. That's where our bus storage and maintenance garage would remain, and those operations wouldn't move to downtown Urbana.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood your question. None of our
I
existing.
kind of asked both of those questions.
Okay.
So but thank you. Yeah. No, thank you very much. You can continue. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to, you were answering the question. Yeah.
Just to put a bow on it, we're not moving any of our existing functions from other facilities to this building, except for the transferring that we now do on the street at the parking garage, between the parking garage and the county courthouse. That we would move to this facility, but none of our offices or maintenance or fueling or anything like that would move.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Chris.
Thank you. What other sites in downtown did the MPD consider?
Several. The two main ones that we considered were the city garage that I just referenced across from the courthouse. That was just too small. We wouldn't actually increase our capacity, which is one of our goals, is to increase the capacity for growth. And the turning radius of an articulated bus was very, very challenging using that space. And we wouldn't be able to have the amenities that we hope to have for our passengers there. So that seemed like a great location because it's right where we're doing it now, and so it's easy for people to accommodate it. At that time, the Hotel Royer didn't exist, and so it was a closed, abandoned hotel, and so we had some discussions and concepts of possibly abandoning part of Elm Street, and we would use the garage and then Elm Street and then a portion or all of the hotel. But that was out of our price range, and there was another buyer, not the one who ended up doing the Hotel Royer. I don't remember the name, but the previous guy who was trying to rehab, and so he kind of came in and pulled it out from underneath us, and so that one fell apart. And then the other one that we were very seriously pursuing was partnering with Busey and their site on Main Street, just one block over, and taking part of their parking lot and sort of almost connecting to the library to the south there. Because they had, at the time, they were saying that they didn't really need the drive-throughs the way that they have now with online banking and that kind of thing. Don't know what their perspective is now, because several years ago they ended up saying, you know what, we're not ready to do this. We've got too much on our plate, and so we're not going to pursue this. So I don't know what their current stances are, but 6 years ago or so they had said. No more, but that could have been a location that we were using. Those were really the ones that we seriously were looking at because we could be accommodated there. We looked at other available parking lots and that kind of thing, but none of them are large enough for us to do what we need to do.
The lot south of Lincoln Square between Beckett and the dry cleaners wasn't big enough?
South of Illinois Street? Well, that's privately held and wasn't for sale at the time, or is that a city lot?
City lot.
North of Illinois is also a city lot, but it's contracted to Lincoln Square. I am. My memory of south of Lincoln Square, the main issue with that is that Lincoln Square becomes an impediment for passengers to get into the downtown. They're on the wrong side of the mall to get downtown. And so we didn't spend much time on the south side of Lincoln Square.
Did the last administration promise the MPD that the Civic Center would be demolished?
I don't think I could say that they promised that. I can say that they closed the Civic Center and that demolition was budgeted. So it was strongly implied that that would happen. And in conversations, we discussed that. But I'm not going to say that anybody said, I promise you, or we promise you that this will happen.
Can the MTD be able to prove to the public that the building needs to be demolished?
I think we could prove that we think it needs to be demolished in order to accomplish our goals. I think everybody has their own metric, and so I don't know if I can meet everybody's metric, but I believe we can meet MTD's metric.
Thanks for your candor. Do you understand what's your understanding of adaptive reuse?
Well, I think Professor Altshuler did a pretty good job of describing it, and I don't know that I would have much understanding beyond the scope of what he described. I certainly have seen buildings that have been adaptively reused, some successfully and some maybe not so successfully, but I think I have a base level understanding. I'm not an architect.
Does the MTD have any interest in adaptive reuse at all? I mean, you said it's not a priority, right?
Well, I certainly would say that's not a priority. Our service and our customers are our priority. I think we have, we're not disinterested in it, but disinterest starts blooming when that starts impinging the ability to accomplish our goals for our service and our customers. And so in the balance, I think we're going to land on the side where we want to improve service and improve amenities and functionality for our customers. But we're not disinterested in it. And again, it's different. Being architecturally sensitive is different from adaptive reuse. But I think that we've shown the community via Illinois Terminal that we have an interest in the look and feel of things. We want to build a building that the community loves. Illinois Terminal was a diamond in the rough in downtown Champaign for a long time before downtown turned around. And so we're proud of that, and we want to do the same in Urbana.
Were the consultants given any directive on the Section 106 review? Were the consultants given any kind of directive to find no value in the Civic Center?
Of course not.
Of course not, okay.
I can tell you that the consultants looked for evidence of value and community interest. And I think it's important to state that they knew that it had been budgeted for demolition. They knew that it had been closed for several years already. There wasn't any record of the building being it wasn't part of a historic district. It wasn't part of lists of most important buildings. It wasn't part of architectural tours. I mean, that's their job, is to look through, all the public records that they can to understand how a building is valued by its surroundings. And there wasn't any evidence of that.
There was no evidence? Why did the State Historic Preservation Office consider it an excellent example of architectural modernism and was eligible to be on the National Register of Historic Places? That was 18 months ago.
Yes, so when you asked if they were directed to not find value, I was giving context on what they were part of that evaluation. And so then, of course, when the State Historic Preservation Office came back and said that they found it to be eligible for the National Registry, then, we had to change course, and they did additional evaluation and steps to document, what that meant and what that would mean for the future project.
Did the MTD Board of Trustees get a hold of the Historic Preservation to get consultation about the building?
Did the MTD board connect with the Historic Preservation Commission?
Yeah, did they get a hold of the HPC at all to get consultation about the Civic Center?
I'm not aware.
You're asking about the communication question, if MTD had, thank you for asking. MTD wasn't involved with the communication. That was a Federal Transit Administration run process, the Section 106 process. The FTA, Federal Transit Administration, is who oversees that. And the FTA did send an invitation to the commission and received a reply from the secretary of the commission. And so they didn't receive a reply from any of the commissioners, but they received a reply from the secretary of the Urbana Historic Preservation Commission. And so from everybody that was involved with the process, the assumption was we got a reply and we're moving forward.
All right, one last question. All right. So is the MTD here tonight to tell the citizens of Urbana that if this building gets landmarked, the MTD will not build a transit center in Urbana?
I don't think I would say it that definitively. I think I would say MTD, if it gets a landmark designation, that makes it very challenging for MTD to accomplish its goals to improve its service and amenities for its riders and the public. I can't definitively say that it's impossible for us to do something there. I mean, I think it could be possible to do something, but we have to make sacrifices and not provide the best service or the best access, or we have to disconnect from the school district and they're going to have to look somewhere else for their central office. So there are dominoes that fall. And so I can't be definitive and say that, but I would say that some dominoes will fall and we'll lose the ability to do some things that we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Carl.
All right. Verdell, did you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple questions.
Go for it.
If you could just give me a percentage of, what percentage are you guys leaning towards as far as willing to reuse the Civic Center? Would you say that you're about 60% no, 80% no, 100% no?
Sorry, let me make sure I understand your question. You're asking me to identify a percentage of how strongly I feel that the Civic Center should be demolished?
Yes, pretty much.
That feels like a corner I'm not sure I want to be painted in. I think that I would reiterate what I just said to Councilperson Evans, that I remain fairly convinced, so that's a pretty high percentage, but I don't know what number, that we will lose the ability to accomplish all of our goals if the building remains.
Okay. Have you been able to tour the Civic Center at all, you or your team, and inspect it?
I can't remember the last time I was in the Civic Center. It was before it closed.
Okay.
I have been to the site and I have walked around the exterior, but I haven't been in the interior.
So you haven't been able to see the condition it currently sits at?
I haven't, but nor have I particularly felt the need. The condition of the building is not what's really a question for MTD.
Okay, I figured it would be if you guys were considering to reuse it. If the mark status is approved, how much will that affect your timeline? Like, how much longer could this potentially delay the project?
I don't know that I am able to answer that. We haven't worked on a landmark designated structure, and we haven't worked with this Historic Preservation Commission. You know, the commissioner earlier mentioned eroded trust, and I think that maybe the one area that we agree with one another is that there is eroded trust. I think that this commission has gotten out in the public and said some things about MTD that just are not true. And so I think that we would have to we would have to go through an extensive process of rebuilding trust and then figuring out the actual work that would need to be done. And I'm not familiar with what that work is, so I unfortunately can't answer your question.
I can say the NEPA process that we just completed took about 2 years, and the plans that were evaluated as part of that, given that demolition was already budgeted by the city and voted on by the council, that was part of the plan that was evaluated for the NEPA evaluation, and so that process would need to be restarted if the structure was landmarked.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then, and this is just kind of a random question, but okay, let's say we knock the building down and you guys are going to build your own new building. You said you haven't had any really any real designs yet, correct?
Correct.
Would you all be willing to use the current Civic Center as perhaps inspiration for the new build?
Absolutely, and that's what one of the conversations we had with Professor Altschuler was, that we were looking for inspiration, and we'd be happy to use that the way that many of his student groups did. And so, we're very interested in that.
I would just add on to that. One of the commissioners also mentioned the need for a qualified architectural historian to be part of this process, which we absolutely agree with, given the site. And so that would be a requirement of our architectural and engineering team, was that we had a Secretary of the Interior qualified architectural historian as part of the process.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, Grace.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm really glad y'all are here in a public meeting and we can have multiple presentations and lots of questions. You said that you hope in the end that there's a building that everyone can be proud of. So it sounds like looking for that compromise and kind of agreement in that process. So I'm just wondering then, because it sounds to me like that is what the historical landmark designation is you work with the historic preservation, especially if they had a letter of willingness to collaborate on the certificate of appropriateness. Why not agree to collaborate in that way if it sounds like that's the same shared goal?
Well, I think there are different forms of collaboration, and that form of collaboration carries with it delays, expense, and impediments. And so our desire is to build the best facility for Urbana and our riders. That's our priority.
But you don't have any more confirmed, detailed information to give us? Like, it's hard to just say, like, the building gets in the way of offices, but, like, how? And that you don't have those plans, right? That you don't have the site plan drawings, and it sounds like I've only kind of heard theoretical obstacles. And so it's hard to think about addressing those without knowing what they actually are.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but we're not at that point in the process. We haven't hired architects to actually start designing. I can tell you, I thought the professor's slides were really cool. He put Illinois Terminal up there, but he placed it right on top of the existing Civic Center. But what in fact would happen is if you preserved that structure and that roof, then nothing can go there. So placing Illinois Terminal over that is a little bit, it's not an apples to apples comparison. And so it's just what are we trying to accomplish, and at what step are we in accomplishing that?
Sure. It seemed like in that slide, though, that was like one of the encapsulation examples where it's building beyond the original footprint, right? Like, I don't think that anyone was saying that it has to be exactly where it is now and only that. Like, they can
Right,
build
but
around
I
it.
thought you were asking about the school district offices, and they wouldn't be able to be on top of that section where the roof is. So they would be sequestered over to the eastern side, which forces their offices to be in a tower, so to speak, instead of spread over the entire structure.
I see. Thank you.
All right. Chris?
Just to clarify, I mean, it was, that diagram was, it was comparing size of things and square footage of things. It was not a plan of any kind.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. So, I mean, why don't you want to work with the Historic Preservation Commission?
They've made it difficult. They have published opinion pieces with misinformation in them and accusations in them. We can work with anybody in town, and we've worked with difficult public bodies before, and other public bodies have probably thought we were difficult before. So you work through those things, and we could probably work through things with the commission too. But I'm identifying that is something that would have to be worked through. There is some there's some damage to trust.
All right. Thank you. No further questions. We appreciate you all. Thank you. All right. We'll give them a chance to get beyond the rope.
Have to call a recess.
Want to recess? All right.
I'm gonna have to get up. And we
Let's
only
get
have
a
four
quick
quorum.
5-minute recess. All right, we will come back. We are going to give our IT team a quick second to unmute. All right. Thank you all for your patience. We will go ahead and come back. So at this time, thank you again to the presenters for coming and speaking. At this time, we will now open the floor to public input. Members of the public wishing to address the council, please state your name, come to the microphone, state your name and city for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
My name is Gabriel Dunn.
Gabriel, if you can,
I'm in
Gabriel, if you can put, yep, there you go. Thank you.
My name is Gabriel Dunn. I live in Ward 2.
I'm sorry, Gabriel. Members of the public, if you could please quiet your voices while we have speakers. Thank you.
I really want to thank the MTD and the presenters on very much a well articulated point of view. This idea about why people might not be willing to work with the Historic Preservation Commission. I don't know. I seem to remember someone who is like very pro Historic Preservation Commission and then going willy-nilly trying to have like every single private home as a historic landmark, tell people like me that if I want affordable housing, I should go east of Philo Road, and I should go north of Lincoln. I don't want to work. I don't want to work with that. And at this point, at one point, I might have been curious about Royer and all these architects, but at this point, I think a good thing is having a transit center where people who do not have a vehicle can transit with a bus where they can warm is more of a need than a bunch of eggheads, staring at some old historic building, So you guys have the alternative response thing, and I know you're talking about the budget. Here's a good way. Let's get rid of this Historic Preservation Commission, and we'll have more money to alternative response. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Williams and City Council. Hopefully you can hear me. That's better. My name is Angela Urban. I'm an Urbana resident, and I'm the chair for the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission, only myself as a resident. I emailed a longer letter yesterday where I attempted to document the timeline of events as I understand them. I would like to request that it be included in the public record. My public remarks tonight are only meant to highlight a few points. At last week's Committee of the Whole meeting, Councilperson Hersey asked a valid question about why MTD has been excluded from the conversation. I just want to mention here, I'm so thankful that those presentations happened today, and I learned so much just by listening to MTD. So I'm glad that they were here, as well as our other two presenters. Certainly, though, MTD has not been excluded prior to today, but their question reflects the broader issues surrounding the Urbana Civic Center and the Section 106 process that we've heard about tonight. In my letter to council and here tonight, I want to be clear that my intent was not to accuse any person of prior miscommunication. I'm not speculating ill intention from the city or CUMTD or even the FTA. Whether these omissions were the result of misunderstanding, administrative breakdown, or other circumstances, the result was that the Historic Preservation Commission and the public were not meaningfully engaged in that Section 106 process for the Civic Center, and it legally requires it. Current staff sent an email today attempting to refute that there were any prior missteps. While I am providing public comment, I'm not able to answer questions at this forum or refute any so-called evidence of major touch points. As I stated last week when I spoke during the public comment, the decision before you tonight should be on the merit of the landmark nomination and need not become a lose-lose situation. HPC representation as a consulting party for Section 106 was wholly absent, even though we learned after the fact that we should have been involved from the start. Section 106 requires that preservation values and the views of consulting parties and the public be meaningfully considered in the decision-making process. Federal agencies must be publicly accountable for their decisions, and they must fully consider the views of the public during project planning. The process works only when all parties are informed and meaningfully included. I respectfully ask that you consider this situation so it can become a win-win for Urbana. And as the City Council, I ask that you support a process that embraces collaboration, respects the expertise of the appointed commissions, and provides meaningful public engagement. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Rand, and I am a disabled homeowner of 11 years and Urbana resident. I'm also a member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the city of Urbana, and I have been legally blind and mostly power chair bound for about 4 years. In that time, my ability to navigate Urbana has changed significantly, and I am here to urge you guys to go forward with getting an MTD station here in Urbana, because as of right now, it costs riders $2 each way to ride a service called Paratransit, which provides semi-direct and semi-private services to get to medical appointments and to other places. It costs $2 each way to ride, and it can only be paid for with exact cash or special tickets that have to be purchased from MTD in downtown Champaign. If that transfer type station was here and we could access those types of services here in Urbana, I could get those tickets independently, because being legally blind, I can't tell coins and change apart, and that makes it difficult for me to do what I need to do. In addition, I have sent several FOIA requests, and I have been arguing with the city for 7 months about our ADA compliance and whether or not we even have money budgeted for that. And my recent FOIA request was noted to say that the money or the numbers that I asked for don't exist. And I hope that I'm wrong, that that's just a wording issue and that Urbana does actually designate money to ADA compliance. But for right now, I'd like to challenge the city to prove that to me, because we can't even remove the snow from the crosswalks to get to an Urbana transfer center for a bus station, let alone be able to use it. So I urge City Council, while I'm still able to stand on my feet, that you guys also stand with me to access those services for Urbana, but to also please add a specific budget line item or some sort of specific tracking for ADA compliance expenditures. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Anna Howe, and I live in Ward 2, but tonight I'm speaking on behalf of Curbanism Club, an organization that advocates for more options for housing, more options for transit, and more options for connected communities. We ask that you vote no on the landmark designation for the Urbana Civic Center. The Civic Center provided a wonderful central gathering space to the public until its closure in 2018. That spirit of accessibility and public good is what made it special, but making it a landmark does not reverse the neglect of the building, nor does it open it up again to resume service. Making it a landmark blocks opportunity for a new public good, as structural renovations would require approval from the Historic Preservation Commission, creating project delays, adding expense, and awarding decision-making authority to a third-party entity. Plans for a transfer station will be delayed or prevented if the building is under landmark status, which means that residents will have to continue without a dedicated terminal. To grant a landmark status would mean blocking an improvement to critical infrastructure and creating a barrier to connectivity for the thousands of riders that rely on MTD. How much longer will Urbana residents go without a proper bathroom or dedicated protection from the elements at their transfer stop? Is the city willing to pay the price of preservation? We ask you to prioritize safe and comfortable transportation access for thousands of riders over the unknowns of preservation in a long vacant building. Please do not choose to expose bus passengers, including us, and MTD employees to extreme weather, subpar bathroom facilities, and uneven unloading areas when there is finally a chance to make an improvement. No concept plan has shown that the existing building's footprint can accommodate the bus circulation and turning radius this project requires at the scale needed. Asking the city to gamble a $32 million grant on an unproven adaptive reuse theory is not a responsible trade against a vital transit improvement. While we appreciate the legacy of the former Civic Center, we believe that there are other ways to honor it other than a landmark status. Please vote no. Thank you.
Good evening, council mayors and everybody. I am going to break the trend here based on what is happening. I'll be speaking on something totally different. So my name is Anthony Fisher, and I am a resident here in Urbana. And I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you tonight about an issue that affects many working people in our community: fair treatment and due process pertaining for rideshare drivers. Every day, Uber and Lyft drivers help to connect Urbana-Champaign residents, University of Illinois students, visitors, workers, seniors, and persons with disability to the places they need to go. The drivers provide transportation at all hours of the day and night, often filling gaps where public transportation may not be available or convenient. For many drivers, rideshare work is more than just an extra income. It helps pay rent, utilities, groceries, medical bill, tuition, and all other essential expenses. Some drivers work full-time. Others, like myself, work part-time to supplement salary. Despite the important service they provide, rideshare drivers can sometimes lose access to their livelihood with little warning and limited opportunity to defend themselves. A driver may wake up one morning and find their account has been deactivated. They may receive a brief explanation or an automated message. In some cases, just an allegation. I want to be very clear. Public safety must come first. If there's credible allegation, sexual misconduct, or any threat whatsoever, then the companies must deal with that immediately. However, when a driver's ability to earn is at stake, there should be a basic fairness. That means providing notice when possible, explaining reasons for deactivation, allowing drivers the opportunity to respond, considering evidence from both sides, and offering meaningful process. Those are not radical ideas. They are principles that reflect fairness and transparency. Across the country, policymakers have been examining whether apps-based workers are greater protection. New York City Council recently adopted a design to give rideshare drivers more due process before permanent deactivation. The goal was not to undermine safety, but to ensure that workers are treated fairly when important decisions are made that affect their ability to earn. I believe Urbana can help lead a similar conversation in Illinois. I understand state law might limit the ability to regulate transportation network companies such as Uber and Lyft. However, there are still meaningful action the city can take. The city council can adopt a resolution supporting fair deactivation procedures. The city council can encourage rideshare companies to voluntarily implement transparent appeal system. The city can partner.
Thank you. You can submit the rest. We'll put it in the record. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Phil Fasella. I live in Urbana Township, just outside of the city of Urbana. But I'm coming in today because I am one of the trustees of the Mass Transit District, and I guess I really appreciate the people that work for us, and I'd like to clear some things up and advocate for them because I think that's my job. So, part of the process under the NEPA is that we have to invite the public and the Historic Preservation Commission to be a part of the process. And I have an email here. It's from Anshu Singh at the FTA, and it was sent to Historic Preservation Commission at urbanaillinois.us, and this was on May the 31st of 2024. And in it, Mr. Singh says, as part of its responsibilities under 36 CFR Part 800, Protection of Historic Properties and the National Historic Preservation Act. The FDA is initiating a Section 106 consultation process for the CUMTD. And FTA has determined the proposed project will be a federal undertaking, and on and on. And there, he concludes, if you would like to participate as a consulting party for the project, we ask you to respond within 30 days of receiving this correspondence, accepting your role as a consulting party. Should you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. And the Secretary of the Historic Preservation Commission did acknowledge receipt of that. I also I have an email here from a Gmail address, and I know things don't always get through on Gmail, from keholiday@gmail.com. This was sent on August the 11th of 2025, 3:38 p.m. And in it, Mrs. Holiday says, I'm writing to inquire about the Urbana Civic Center and Section 106 review. It's my understanding that several local groups would like to be considered as consulting parties, including possibly the Urbana Historic Preservation Committee and PACA. Well, I'm a member of both groups. I'm not writing as either's official representative. Could you provide information about the status of the review, how these interested parties could be included? And the FTA responded with a several-page email explaining everybody who's been contacted to date and their involvement. So I think that I understand technology has its limitations. You don't always get emails, and I get that. But I think our staff has done their very best. And I guess the only thing I'd like to conclude with is, you know, the other part of my responsibility is to our operators. It's to the people that work in these buildings and maintain them. And we need to design a facility that makes it easy for them to operate buses safely and functionally so that it's functional for the public. And I want to set up all the people who work for me to succeed, just like I think you do with your own staff. So thank you very much for your time.
Is this okay? I'm Nancy Westcott. I'm a longtime Urbana resident. I've lived in Urbana 45 years. I've Champaign-Urbana 50 years. I've been an MTD rider much of that time. I will just say that the MTD to me has really been a lifesaver through that time. They have kind of a culture of, you know, friendliness and helpfulness. And I think when you hear someone say that he will, even if the landmark is not passed, he will take into account the area and the style of the building. Just looking at the building in downtown Champaign, it's a jewel. And I am tired of waiting in the snow and rain in Lincoln Square or outside Lincoln Square. It's just really an uncomfortable place to wait. And it's also confusing because there are 3 different parking or bus stops in 3 different locations. And, you know, if you're not as good a planner as I might be, sometimes I get confused as to which one is which. It would be nice to be in one area where it would be easy and safe to cross the street and find a bus stop and find the correct bus. So I guess I would urge you to not go for the landmark designation. I think you can trust MTD to take into consideration the historical value of the building that is being replaced and to use what they can. And the other practical thing is I think that asbestos really could be a major issue. I mean, for a building built in the 1970s, that could be really tricky. So, and a huge expense. So I think that, well, that's what I think. So thank you very much.
I'm Phyllis Williams. I filed the application. On June 3rd of 2026, staff recommended the Historic Preservation Commission find that the local landmark nomination for 108 East Water Street, Urbana, conforms with criteria A, C, D, E, and F of Section 12-5C of the zoning ordinance and recommended approval of the application to Urbana City Council with findings of fact as stated in the summary of findings. Historic landmark status was recommended to you. I believe this is one of the few times the council has been tasked with such a decision, and council received no guidance from city staff on the process of handling this application. It seemed exceptional that the staff who recommended approval of this application at the UHPC and recommended approval to the council based on the findings of fact quickly brushed aside those findings, invoking a different standard for the council to consider at the meeting of June 15. The points of recommendation were never discussed. This application is allowed under the Urbana zoning ordinance. Urbana has a process which was adopted in good faith. Staff recommended to the UHPC that historic landmark status be granted. The UHPC recommended same to council. The findings of fact and the merits of the application need to be the basis of this decision. This properly filed application has been found to have merit and should be approved. Thank you.
My name's Susan Apple. I'm a resident of Champaign and former resident of Urbana, but I'm speaking tonight as chair of the Advocacy Committee of PACA, the Preservation and Conservation Association of Champaign County. PACA is naturally very interested in the nomination of the Urbana Civic Center as a historic landmark, and we support that effort wholeheartedly. I wish to underscore that this building, while long neglected other than minimally, has been shown to the satisfaction of the Historic Preservation Commission to satisfy 5 of the 7 categories of significance as a landmark. Please recognize that landmarking only requires a structure or a site to satisfy 1 such category. The Civic Center satisfies 5 of 7. That alone should warrant your attention and thought. It may be easier for you to overlook all this, given that the building has been allowed to deteriorate for a number of years, but its essential form and worth are still there. There is nothing like it in Urbana, or Champaign for that matter. It deserves your thoughtful consideration. I would also like to point out that Urbana is fortunate to have a very professional Historic Preservation Commission. Its members include scholars and experts with extensive experience in historic preservation, architectural history, and related fields. Not all cities have such effective commissioners, and since I've attended a good number of their meetings, I can say that their careful discussion and consideration is often enlightening and demonstrates their expertise and careful thinking. I'm in a position to appreciate that since I'm a retired professor of architectural and art history myself, and I served on Champaign's HPC for 9 years. Some of you may have experience in such things as well, and if you do, you likely recognize the value of the determinations of your HPC. My point here is to stress that the Preservation Commission does not review nominations lightly. You can count on their solid, deliberative decision-making, and their recent consideration of the Civic Center was thorough and appropriate. This building warrants landmark status as an unusual local example of public modernist architecture. Please do not allow it to be dispensed with without very careful thought. Recognize, too, that if it is replaced, a new building will also need a new roof and new systems, etc. The fact that those features are no longer in good condition here doesn't mean that they cannot be replaced. If you'll give me a second. And the building itself is adaptable to new uses. It does not have to enlarge a local landfill.
You can send the rest in the, we'll put the rest in the record. Thank you so much. No, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Recycling is better than demolition.
Thank you. All right, so we have 3, well, I have a few emails, and then I think Chris has one as well. All right, I request that the following be read into the record during the public comment portion of City Council meeting, June 22nd, 2026. Dear Urbana City Council, my name is Nick Anad, and I have been a resident of the Champaign-Urbana area for 9 years. I am writing to urge the City Council to prioritize Urbana's future by voting against the designation of Urbana Civic Center as a historic property, which would allow MTD to move forward with its plans to build a transfer center in downtown Urbana. As cities grow, they eventually reach a scale where they cannot handle everyone driving in their own personal cars. Urbana has already passed this point, as illustrated by frequent congestion and backups on Lincoln and University Ave. To reduce traffic and stimulate economic activity, we must continue to work to make riding the bus a practical alternative to driving. Our current primary transfer point, the Lincoln Square Garage and Courthouse, is not adequate for modern transit systems that ranks among the best in the country. It lacks the reinforced concrete needed for the volume of bus traffic it currently handles. That the traffic it currently handles. It has only small shelters to shield passengers from elements and forces both bus riders and operators to rely on single porta potties. The lack of adequate signage makes it difficult for new riders to find the appropriate platform, and riders are forced to cross the street to get from one platform to another. Additionally, the lack of staff creates safety concerns. Anecdotally, I recently had a friend ask me to pick her up from Lincoln Square because she did not feel safe waiting 10 minutes for the next bus. Our transit stations should be places that our community takes pride in, not places where people fear for their safety. MTD's proposed facility on the site of the Civic Center resolves all of these issues. If we choose to reject this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build a $32 million transit center, we are choosing to permanently cripple the future of Urbana's transit infrastructure and the safety of mobility and of residents for generations to come. I urge the council to reject the historic designation and invest in a safer and more equitable Urbana. Thank you, Nick Anad, 1306 North Lincoln Ave.
Dear Mayor Williams and members of the Urbana City Council, I respectfully ask the council to prioritize human needs, accessibility, and the public good as you consider the future of the Urbana Civic Center and transit infrastructure. I appreciate the importance of historic preservation and recognize the value that landmarks such as the Urbana Civic Center hold for many members of our community. Historic buildings tell stories, preserve memory, and contribute to our sense of place. These spaces matter. At the same time, I respectfully urge the council to prioritize people, especially students, residents who use wheelchairs, and marginalized communities who may not have the luxury of owning a car. Places matter because people give them meaning. A building becomes significant because of the lives, memories, relationships, and communities connected to it. When we make decisions about public infrastructure, we must ask not only what we preserve, but whom we serve. Public transit is not merely about buses or buildings. It's about access, dignity, opportunity, and quality of life. A modern and accessible transit center has the potential to improve daily life for thousands of people, including students, seniors, working families, people with disabilities, and marginalized community members who rely on public transportation. It can better serve wheelchair users, riders with mobility challenges, cyclists who depend on bike racks and bike-on-bus access, and many others who rely on safe and reliable transit to move through our city. For many residents, transit is essential for accessing education, employment, healthcare, grocery stores, and community resources. Improvements to transit infrastructure can reduce barriers and expand opportunity, especially for those who already face systemic inequities. I believe historic preservation should remain an important consideration. However, preservation should not prevent necessary investments in accessibility, mobility, equity, public well-being when critical infrastructure improvements are needed. A caring city must continually ask, how do we create a community that is more inclusive, more accessible, and more equitable for current and future generations? Urbana has long been a city that values both history and progress. I believe we can honor our past while making courageous decisions that better serve people today and tomorrow. Sincerely, Steve Fay.
Mary Ellis.
Good evening, Mayor Williams and council members. I'm a 21-year employee of the city of Urbana, but I'm writing as a 21-year resident who cares about the community and its future. The Civic Center has been vacant for 8 years. If there were developers lined up to restore it and put it back into productive use, you would probably be having a different conversation tonight. But that hasn't happened. For 8 years, the building has sat empty. Today, we have MTD willing to invest millions of dollars in downtown Urbana. MTD isn't bringing us a wish list or a concept sketch. They have a real project, real funding opportunities, and a track record of delivering major public infrastructure projects. They've spent years looking for a suitable location in Urbana, and they believe this site works. They've also been very clear. If the building is landmarked, the project will not move forward. I understand the appeal of adaptive reuse. In theory, it sounds like the best of both worlds, but I haven't heard a realistic explanation of how it would work. The more conditions we place on redevelopment, the harder redevelopment becomes. We've seen that firsthand in downtown Urbana. Development is hard. It takes time. It takes money. It takes the right partner. The city assembled and cleared the block at Vine and Main and still spent years trying to bring a project to life. Even then, adjustments had to be made to make the project financially viable. The Hotel Royer also took years to become the showpiece it is today. Development doesn't happen because we hope it will. It happens when someone is willing to invest, take a risk, and commit to the community. Right now, that's exactly what MTD is prepared to do. I respect those who want to preserve the Civic Center. Their commitment to Urbana's history comes from a good place. But do we want to continue holding on to the building that has sat vacant for nearly a decade while we wait for a solution that may never come? Or do we want to support a project that brings people, activities, services, and investment into downtown Urbana? I believe landmarking this building makes redevelopment less likely, not more likely, and I believe turning away a $32 million investment in downtown Urbana would be a costly mistake that downtown Urbana can ill afford. Thank you, Kate Levy.
All right. Last, we have please read my comments aloud in public record at tonight's meeting. Please vote against landmarking the Urbana Civic Center. Recent comments from HPC about the site raises several unsustainable claims that should be carefully reviewed as the City Council considers making the building a local landmark. Condition and costs. Claims that the building is in excellent condition are subject and conflict with the assessments of the city staff responsible for maintenance. In 2018, repair costs were estimated between $750,000 and $1 million, and those numbers are now outdated. They do not reflect inflation, further deterioration, or the cost of meeting modern building codes and accessibility standards. Some argue these estimates are unreliable because no architect completed them. However, architects design buildings. Cost estimates and condition assessments are typically done by facility managers, engineers, and construction professionals. Staff evaluations should not be dismissed simply because they were not prepared by an architect. The question is not whether the building is in good condition, but whether the city is willing to invest the significant funds needed to make it usable long-term if it becomes a landmark. Section 106 review process claims that the Historic Preservation Commission, HPC, was excluded from the federal review process conflict with city staff statements that all procedures were followed. The timeline also shows that demolition had been considered since 2023, well before the federal review concluded in 2026. If there were communication issues, they should be addressed directly, but there is no evidence that the city staff bypassed required steps. HPC's role. Some concerns stem from broader frustrations with HPC's role in city decisions. While valid, those concerns are separate from the current decision. MTD does not control preservation policy. The city does. Directing frustrations at MTD is misplaced. CUMTD's position in site planning. MTD has consistently said it cannot plan for property it does not own. After years of study, the Civic Center site was identified as the most feasible location for a transit center. MTD also states that keeping the current building would prevent proper development because it limits safe bus movement and flexibility. Even if buses might physically fit around the corners, the design must safely handle multiple buses under real operational conditions. MTD's conclusions are based on professional experience and should carry more weight than opinions from onlookers. Landmark designation and project control. If the building becomes a landmark, the HPC would need to approve future changes. This creates uncertainty for a major public project. When federal funding is secured, MTD will be responsible for delivering the project on time and within budget. It is reasonable they would hesitate if independent bodies could control, influence final design decisions. Clear control is standard for large public projects. Preservation. We will put the rest of this email into the record. That concludes our public input, and we will now move to council input and communications. At this time, if there are any members of the council wishing to speak, the floor is yours. Mary Alice.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody who came out, and I especially want to thank the people who came and gave presentations today. I found it really insightful and really good to hear from multiple different entities, and I particularly appreciated all the hard work that everybody has done on this project. So, thank you.
Grace.
Thank you. I appreciate people coming out and sharing their input, and I'll take my 3 minutes to share on another topic. Just wanted to report back on an event yesterday out at Homer Lake that hosted a lunch welcoming 29 people in a caravan doing the same trail of the Potawatomi Trail of Death forced removal in 1837 of over 750 people forced to march 660 miles with over 40 lives lost along the way, many of which children and elderly. Allison Winters from the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois gave a nice talk and said that I could share some of her words that better articulate what I could. So some of her words from the event yesterday was, I want to speak plainly about the Trail of Death, about what the Trail of Death was. Children died on the journey, families were torn from the only home they knew, a people's language, ceremony, and way of life were violently disrupted. We do not soften that truth, and we do not rush past it. We name it, we mourn it, because remembering honestly is the only way to honor those who did not survive the journey. In the same breath, we recognize this. The Potawatomi people are still here. Despite forced removal, despite loss, despite generations of attempts to erase their culture, the Potawatomi people endure. That survival is not a footnote in this history, it is the heart of it. Resilience, sustained across nearly 200 years, deserves to be honored as much as grief. This gathering is possible because of partnership. As our nation marks 250 years this year, the Community Foundation felt a particular responsibility to pause and ask whose stories have been left out on that anniversary. Our location adjacent to the land-grant university, built on indigenous land, made that question impossible to set aside. We sought out the stories of the indigenous people of our region because amplifying them is part of what it means to steward this community honestly. The Lumpkin Family Foundation shared that conviction, and their generous grant in support of Untold Stories has helped us begin this work. We are grateful for their partnership and for their willingness to invest in truth-telling. I also want to recognize the leadership in this room. Representatives from Homer, Urbana, Champaign, and University of Illinois have all shown up today, not because they had to, but because they care about getting the story right. When local government, academic institutions, and community foundations sit in the same room with shared purpose, real change becomes possible. And to the many community nonprofits gathered here this afternoon, thank you. This work cannot be carried by one organization alone. It takes a network of people willing to listen first, to learn together, and to lend their platform to voices that have not always been heard. You are that network. Your presence here today is the beginning of something we hope to grow for years to come. I want to be honest about where we are. This is the start. We are not arriving today with all the answers. We are arriving with curiosity and a willingness to keep learning. And then we also afterwards had the honor to hear from George Godfrey, Potawatomi elder, and tell some of the stories that happened in that exact kind of close to that area when the march was happening. And information at trailofdeath.org.
Thank you. Anyone else? James.
First of all, I do also want to thank the presenters tonight for giving some more perspective on this question, and all of the people who have reached out to us both here in person and via email on the question of the Civic Center. I did want to say thank you to the organizers and the staff who supported the parade on Juneteenth. It's a great community event. Great to see everybody who came out and walked in the parade, and all the members of that community who were along the side of the road cheering that group on. I would defer to our mayor to make some more comments about that event.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. Definitely want to shout out the Well Experience on the Urbana Park District, City of Urbana, and all of the organizations that showed up in support of an amazing community event. I don't know how many people showed up, but I can tell you that the parking lot was full. A lot of hot dogs were made and eaten, a lot of candy given out, and you know, at the end of the day, it brought the community, all different races, sizes, everything in between, out together to celebrate. So it was an amazing event, special event, and I'm looking forward to many more. So yes, thank you to the community and everyone involved. Sharice or Verdale. Thank you, James.
I would like to just say I really appreciate this opportunity, the opportunity to have everybody in the room where it happened. And I think it's important that we not hear just one side or, you know, two sides. Actually, there seems to be three sides to this particular argument or discussion regarding the Civic Center. I just want to say it was informational. I appreciate that everyone kind of put their hand in to say exactly what they felt, but not just what they felt, but what they knew, and that matters. Thanks a lot for doing your presentations tonight.
All right, thank you, Sharice. Verdale, anything?
Yes, I just wanted to say, kind of piggyback on everyone else. Thank you to the MTD for coming and giving your side of the story. Thank you to the Historic Preservation Commission, the city staff, the U of I and their students, just for all the time, effort, and money spent surrounding this project. You know, I truly believe that the Civic Center has had a very special place in this community for decades, and this is not an easy topic. So I appreciate everyone coming into the same room tonight and giving their side of the story. So I hope that whatever happens, that, you know, whether it's keeping the Civic Center or building a whole new building, I just, you know, I hope that it can really enhance the downtown corridor, as well as to continue to contribute to serving the people of Urbana in a meaningful way. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, there are no reports of standing committee, so we will now move to Committee of the Whole. Councilmember Jones, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is Committee of the Whole, June 22nd, 2026. We will move to the consent agenda. There is nothing currently on the consent agenda, so we will move forward to the regular agenda. First item of business is resolution number 2026-0602R, a resolution amending an intergovernmental agreement for the Emergency Telephone System Board between the City of Urbana, the City of Champaign, the Village of Rantoul, Illinois, the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois, and the County of Champaign, Illinois.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
All right, motion made by Jones, seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion? No discussion. All right, seeing none, clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
Thank you. And that passes. Mr. Jones.
All right, next order of business, ordinance number 2026-06-015, an ordinance improving a special use permit medical clinic at 909 North Cunningham Avenue, plan case number 2522-SU-26.
Second.
All right, motion made by Jones, seconded by Wilkins. Any discussion? Grace.
Thank you. Just wanted to circle back. I was just trying to check and confirm some of the changes last week about this applying to only Suite A and clarifying that it does not apply to a plasma center. And I see that in Section 1 in the legally binding part here. And then I was curious about the legal description still has like all the parcels, 6 parcels still in the description. Is that accurate if it's only Suite A?
Thank you for that point of clarification. I believe that we will need to revise the legal description to match Suite A only. So I think that was an error that needs to be corrected in the ordinance, but otherwise the ordinance reflects that it would just be applied to Suite A.
Do you think we need to take any action on that, or that's just kind of in line with what was already decided last week and just kind of a clerical correction in a sense?
My understanding is that would be a clerical correction that staff would be able to address before it's recorded, the ordinance is recorded.
Thank you.
Mary Alice.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I never like voting on an ordinance where the language is still being refined, so I just wanted to double check with Matt. Is that appropriate to change the legal definition even if we approve the ordinance?
If it's in the ordinance itself, if the legal description is in the ordinance.
It is. It's in the ordinance under Section 1.
It is. It should be amended verbally. The clarification should be made verbally as part of the vote to direct staff to take the same action.
All right. Well, then I will make a motion to amend this to update the legal description for land commonly known as 909 North Cunningham Avenue to only pertain to Suite A.
Second.
Thank you. Do we know which parcel is Suite A? I feel like we already have Suite A, but which parcel is the question? Or just say keep only whichever parcel correlates with Suite A? Because it's the parcel number that's the issue. Like Suite A is already in there.
I think that's the point of the amendment, that we're directing the staff to correct the legal description to limit it to Part A.
That was my intent.
And we can't, I don't know that we can do that on the fly.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is to amend the updated legal description to only Suite A. Motion made by Mary Alice. It was seconded by by James. I'm sorry. There's no further discussion. Clerk, can you call the roll on the amendment?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Yes.
All right, that amended motion passes. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, the we now need to take the vote on passing the actual. Yep. Okay. All right. So now I'll enter Mary Alice. Go for it.
I have a question.
Yes.
I want to make sure, Matt, the language in here about the plasma center, that's all good and that's very clear. I mean, it's clear in the ordinance, but I just don't know if it is legally clear, if that makes sense.
I believe it is based upon just a quick review here. I think it's clear enough to pass muster.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're back to the original motion to approve ordinance number 2026-06-015, ordinance approving a special use permit, medical clinic at 909 North Cunningham Avenue, plan number 2522-SU-26 with the amended updates. Motion made by Wilkin, by Mary Alice, seconded by
Verdell.
I'm sorry, motion made by Verdell, seconded by Wilkin. If there's no further discussion, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
All right, that passes. Thank you. All right, Mr. Jones.
Next order of business is ordinance number 2026-06-016, an ordinance designating a historic landmark at 108 East Water Street, the Urbanic Civic Center. Historic preservation case number HP-2026-L-01.
Second.
All right, motion made by Jones, seconded by Wilkins. Is there any discussion? Mary Alice.
All right, I tried to write down my thoughts so I could be efficient in my thoughts on this case. This is a complicated case. This is a case that a lot of people within our community are very interested in. So I kind of broke my things into two lists here. The first one is that what I'm convinced of, all right? I'm convinced that the community is torn. I am convinced that the community is behind a bus transport. Doesn't matter which side you're on. I am convinced that there has been an erosion of trust between MTD and the Historic Preservation Committee. What I'm not convinced on is I'm not convinced that we can't save any part of this building. I think there has been quite a bit of, I wouldn't say misinformation, but rather people talking in different ways in terms of the historic landmark, as we saw today in the presentations. Designating it as a historic landmark does not mean that the building stays as is or is updated to code. It can mean many different things. So I'm not convinced that we can't save a part of the building. I am convinced that the building itself probably can't stand without significant investment. I believe that there is a way to move forward with both the bus transport and also some portion of the Civic Center. But because I also believe that the Historic Preservation Committee and the MTD have been at odds for a while, I'm concerned about the ability for both of those groups to be able to work together. I also want to remind the community that this doesn't guarantee a bus transport. There's still a lot of stuff that has to be done. Most specifically, everybody keeps talking about the $32 million, but that's not for sure. We don't have that for sure. So even if we say that this is not a landmark, does not guarantee that a bus terminal is going to be built there. So I just want to be really, really clear about that. And so in talking to community development staff, they reminded me that this is city-owned land, and in order for the MTD to be able to do anything with it, an IGA, which is an intergovernmental agreement, has to be passed by this city council. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that right now, I am leaning towards not marking it as a landmark, and this is why. I think that there is still a way for the community and staff and MTD and the Historic Preservation Committee to work together with a common vision. Unfortunately, the situation that we find ourselves in today, that is less clear to me. And so Olivia Osso, who's the director or the head of community development? I can't remember your title.
The director.
Director. Yeah, she's the one who told me about the IGA, and then she also wrote a letter to City Council about his designation of landmark can be done a year later. So I guess what I'm saying is this is not the end of the road for either direction. So those are my thoughts.
Chris.
Thank you. Commissioner Holliday was incorrect, or maybe didn't understand my question, but the City of Urbana Community Development Department did recommend that this building be landmarked because those are the rules. The building qualifies for landmark status. That is the question before us. The only question before us to decide is the landmark status of the Civic Center. And so it should be landmarked. That it also might mean it might need to be demolished to make way for a transit center. We still need a transit center, and I would insist that the MTD do what it does best, and me and my mom have known about the MTD. I've ridden the MTD since 1976. I am one of those people that stand out there next to the porta potty in the weather for a bus every week. I love the MTD. It's what makes being poor in this town tolerable in every kind of way, and especially for those of us that with disabilities and whatnot, we rely heavily on the MTD. I would insist that the MTD go forward with its transit project, that it apply for that $32 million. It is irresponsible not to apply for it. Go ahead and make the application. I think as adults in the room, we can all work together and continue to design a transit center with the Civic Center in mind or not. And I think in the course of the design process, we'll determine together as a community whether the Civic Center can stay there or not, or can be used in some kind of way, torn apart, replaced, take the bricks, take the wood, something. But it is just absolutely unnecessary to stop building a transit center if this building gets landmarked. Thank you.
Grace.
Thank you. I appreciate those previous comments from council members and again from members of the public who've put in a lot of work and comment on this. Testing, testing. Microphone. It's on. Not coming through. Any better? No.
Bear with us. Yeah, no.
Is this one on? Better? No?
Where were Dennis?
Testing.
Testing.
How about mine? Any better? Okay, we got it. Thank you. Thank you for the notification. It's hard to hear when the sound's in my head as well. Was saying that I appreciate fellow council members' input and everyone who came from the public and given their time to think about this issue. I do want to talk also kind of bigger picture, that this is a public asset from the city. And remembering that the city government exists only to serve the people of Urbana, from all of the money from the people of Urbana. And this is a public asset. I think it was said that this is a city building, so this is mine, or it's ours, just the people up here. And it is actually, I think, quite the opposite. This belongs to the people of Urbana. It was paid for and maintained by taxpayer money from people who buy our goods and services and spend their time in Urbana. We already have in the budget, in the CIP, $700,000 to demolish the Civic Center this year. That's the plan. So to my understanding, if this is not landmark designated, if this doesn't go through, the plan already in motion and in writing and approved is that the city will demolish this to the ground at the cost of $700,000 estimate of taxpayer money to demolish it to the ground, in which case there will be no opportunity to reevaluate it next year as a historic landmark after it's demolished. I think that it's important to have a public process for a public asset and something so important like this. I don't think that having extra input or this kind of public process should be seen as an inconvenience. This is an important public thing. The city, I think, plans to give or sell this to the MTD. I don't know. I do think there were a lot of closed-door conversations. I think that the mayors have a lot of leadership responsibility as head of the executive branch, but also are not the only ones involved in city government, and again, are here to serve the people of Urbana. That is entirely our purpose and only reason to exist. I think that it's really unfortunate that there's this mistrust all around. I really hope that that can be bridged on both sides. I don't know if even tonight helped clarify even the words for plans in general versus plans meaning official drawings. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings, and I do hear the mistrust and then also the kind of give and willingness to understand on both sides, and I really hope that that can continue. It's hard to talk about this when it is still a process, that there are no plans in the form of official drawings or designs yet. There's no evidence or information of asbestos as far as I know. There's a lot of assumptions here. There's no certainty for the grant being received, even applying for. I think the issue here is that this building does meet historic landmark eligibility recommended by the Historic Preservation Commission and city staff to designate it as such. And I am in support of this historic preservation designation because I think it just qualifies for it in general. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to reuse the building in an adaptive way. I don't think that means sitting there. I think, as Marielle said, we kind of have a lot of things we agree on. I think there's agreeance that we need a transit station in downtown Urbana. This location is a good option that's been talked about, not very publicly apparently, for a decade and a half, and it needs to be a public process for a public asset. And I think that this is not an inconvenience to throw in the wrench of the plans that weren't public. It is unfortunate if this were to delay any of that timeline, which we're not sure of, but there should have been a conversation years ago about this, and then it wouldn't have been a delay. And we can't go back and change things that have already happened, but I think we can move forward. And again, voting no means we demolish it to the ground, and MTD builds what they want with absolutely zero official process for community input. For me, I think it's a pretty low bar, the certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission. They've had a willingness to cooperate on that, and I think that if there could be some conversations, have some things in writing, some agreements, I think that would be really great. This is a good move, I think, environmentally, for the people of Urbana and for that long-term planning. And I don't think that it needs to hold up the plans, and I really hope we can find the collaboration.
James.
All right, yeah, I do think this was a useful conversation tonight to hear more information. Unfortunately, it hasn't moved my mindset, which is my priority is serving the people of Urbana through improving our public transit system. I don't agree with some of the comments that have been made. I think Mary Alice brings up a very good point that the transition of city property to another government entity requires an intergovernmental agreement, and that provides a place where some expectations of the city can be involved in that process. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the landmark status, despite what people have said, is going to be a blocker to an ultimate outcome. It may not be insurmountable, but it will certainly take more time and more investment. I will point out, and I'm not an expert on this, but I understand the $32 million people keep throwing out is the total of the investment in building a transit system. I do understand that there's local match in those kinds of grants. And so we're not just talking about the federal government walking in and building this building for us for $32 million. It's something that we have to contribute to as a local community. And so it's not something that the magic purse of the U.S. government will solve the problems that determining that we want to get to an acceptable change to the building that fits in there. It would be totally irresponsible to assume this building doesn't require asbestos abatement because of when it was built and what was going on then. We don't know what that is, but it would be irresponsible to assume that. And so I've heard from a lot of people on this. I've heard a lot from a lot of people on both sides, and I think the priority has to be for moving the community forward. And I also don't believe that I know how budgets work. I know how capital plans work. There are outlines, there are blueprints. I don't think we need to tear this building down until we know there's a grant and that the money is coming. And so I would ask the city staff to think about that just because we've put something in a plan means there's money there to do it. It doesn't mean we have to spend it. We, over and over again, we move money from one year to another because what we said we were going to do didn't get done. And so I'm not going to support landmark status for this, but I think Mary Alice's point that this could be revisited in a year if there's no grant and the building hasn't been torn down, I think that's a real possibility, and I will do my part to see that that's what happens if that's the way things go.
Thank you. Sharice, anything?
Yes.
Go for it. Floor is yours.
I'm actually going to piggyback on what James just said. Us having the money to demo the building does not mean that it's going to be demoed right away. Also, I really feel that it's very important for our city, and it would be helpful in the growth of Urbana that we have a terminus downtown. Not just, it's important for the riders, but it's also important for those who drive the buses. That they have a place to be able, in between, to go to the bathroom, get a sandwich, get a soda or something, and there are a lot of other issues because we don't know what the architectural plans would be for MTD, but it's been this wait and see with them, and I can understand why. They've had a lot of stuff that they've had to take care of before they could even think about applying for the grant. But I think it's more important also that we have room to move forward, and therefore I will be supporting that for the MTD terminus. So that's all I can say.
All right, thank you, Sharice. Verdell.
Yes, just want to reiterate once again, thank you to everyone who spoke on this project, who's emailed us. This is a tough one. I believe that the Civic Center has had a special place in this community for decades, bringing the community together for many occasions, many events. But you know what? I believe that those glory days have passed, and the best way to kind of memorialize the Civic Center is to use its land or property to continue to contribute to this amazing community and the people in it, enhancing our public transportation and giving our school district the space it needs to thrive, is an issue that we can all agree on, that is needed for the city. I will piggyback off of James and Mary Alice that, I do ask the city if MCD does not receive the grant for some reason, that we hold off on demolition and we revisit other options. And if they do receive the grant, that we use the time to work together and are willing, keyword willing, to work together to create a unique building that uses the Civic Center for inspiration. But also that could become a new landmark that adds more character to our growing downtown. So I will be, for now, voting no on the landmark status. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Motion made. Grace, did you have something else? Go for it.
They did just want to, I think some of us understand, but just clarify that we already approved demolition of it this year and funding in the CIP. And individual council members can ask that not happen, but that's not how this works. We already approved it. It's already the plan. So I would encourage us to think about, if that's not what you want, we need to amend the CIP or the budget or make some kind of thing other than an individual request, because that doesn't hold any weight. That doesn't mean anything, and we've already officially passed it.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor.
I would just speak to the point that James made. I mean, it's very common for us to roll projects over from year to year, so we're not standing in the gate ready to start a demolition project now. So there's plenty of space and room for us to for us to talk and discuss this. We obviously would not move forward with that project without direct communication from council. So speaking for Public Works.
Mary Alice, did you have something to add?
Yeah, two things. The first one is that I think that all of this public input that we've had has made it very clear to City Council, and I think also to the staff, that we have to treat this, we have to tread a little bit carefully. And one of my concerns with the CIP, which is Capital Improvement Plan, was that were we demoing, right, the Civic Center? Were we saying, yes, you have to go ahead? And the mayor said it would absolutely come back as a conversation here. So I feel confident that the staff and the executive office hears loud and clear how important the Civic Center is, and we need to be careful and considerate in terms of, we want a terminal, but if we don't get the money, do we still need to demolish the Civic Center? My answer is no. But I do have faith that it'll come back to City Council for that. So I wanted to add that. And I just wanted to say that at the end of the day, I feel like I would support and would like to see both part of the Civic Center and the terminal come to fruition and together. And I feel like at the moment, the way forward, the end result is unfortunately to not mark this at landmark status today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I appreciate the comment. All right, the motion made by Jones, seconded by Grace. Discussion has been had. No further discussion. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu?
No.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
No.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
No.
All right, that motion fails. Thank you. Mr. Jones, the floor is yours.
Okay, next item of business, ordinance number 2026-06-017, an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2026-2027 annual budget.
Second.
Motion made by Jones, seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion? Chris?
Motion.
Oh, Chris?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the FY 2027 budget. Line item 100202220, the $455,201 for the community engagement team be eliminated from the FY 2027 budget, and ask for a second on that amendment.
Second.
All right, there has been a motion to amend the budget for $455,000 for the community engagement to be eliminated. Motion made by Evans, seconded by Grace. Is there any discussion? Chris.
Thank you. On December 18th, 2014, President Barack Obama issued an executive order appointing an 11-member task force on 21st century policing to respond to a number of serious incidents between law enforcement and the communities they are supposed to serve and protect. The president wanted to begin the process of healing and restoring community trust. The mission of the executive order was clear. The task force shall identify best practices and make recommendations to the president on how policing practices can promote effective crime reduction while building public trust. The task force comprised leaders from law enforcement, police unions, academia, and civil rights organizations, as well as community members. The task force generated 59 recommendations and 92 action items. The document produced in May of 2015 is considered by some to be the best guideline outlining the best practices of the policing profession. It serves well to be reminded what the 21st Century Police Task Force said on page 43. Under recommendation 4.2, it says, quote, community policing should be infused throughout the culture and organizational structure of law enforcement agencies. Community policing must be a way of doing business by an entire police force, not just a specialized unit of that force. The task force heard testimony from Police Chief J. Scott Thompson of Camden County, New Jersey, who noted, quote, community policing cannot be a program, a unit, strategy, or tactic. It must be the core principle that lies at the foundation of a police department's culture. The only way to significantly reduce fear, crime, and disorder and then sustain these gains is to leverage the greatest force multiplier, the people of the community. This message was closely echoed by Chris Mangus, the police chief in Richmond, California, to build a more effective partnership with residents and transform culture within the police department as well as in the community. The Richmond Police Department made sure that all officers, not just a select few, were doing community policing and neighborhood problem solving. Every officer is expected to get to know the residents, businesses, community groups, churches, and schools on their beat and work with them to identify and address public safety challenges, including quality of life issues such as blight. Officers remain in the same beat or district for several years or more, which builds familiarity and trust. And that is from page 43 of the task force report. Constituents tell me if I am to be serious about connecting people with resources, then do exactly that. Give the resources to the people who actually need it in the form of educational scholarships and rent subsidies and pay some of that back pay reparations we owe instead of giving $1,555,050 to 3 police officers in a police substation for 3 years. Recently, a homeless man hit me in between the eyes with a question I had no good answer for. How is it a homeless shelter housing over 70 men, the homeless man asked, had to be closed for lack of funds, but you officials can find the money for 3 police officers in a substation? All I could think to say is what often gets said in Champaign County, quote, people like to get paid off your dysfunction. Thanks for letting me speak.
All right, thank you, Chris. We have an amendment on the floor for the elimination of $455,000 to motion made by Evans, seconded by Wilkins. James, discussion.
Yeah, I can't support this amendment, just like I wasn't able to support the attempt to stop the lease, just like I wasn't able to support this amendment last budget year, just like I wasn't willing to support the change to the budget that was a clerical error a year and a half ago, just like I wasn't willing to support this amendment 2 years ago when we were doing this budget. So I will be voting against this amendment.
All right, Mary Alice.
Well, James did a heck of a lot better, like iterating through all of the different votes. I was just going to say that I appreciate some of the council members who feel very passionately about this and continue to bring it up, but I happen to disagree, and I will be voting no on this amendment.
All right, anyone on the phone? All right, clerk, will you please call the roll? Okay. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
No.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey, Councilmember Hersey, okay, well, Councilmember Jones,
No.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
No.
Mayor Williams,
No. Sharice, are you back? All right, either way, we can get Sharice to call back in. That budget amendment failed, so. All right, now we're back to the original ordinance. I'm sorry, Jones, Burdell. We're back on to the original ordinance, so I'll entertain a motion. A second. Oh, we already did?
Yeah.
Who made that one? I'm sorry. Mary Alice, yes. All right, any further discussion? Thank you. Grace.
Thank you. I already tried some things last week that failed. Still very disappointed that there was an unwillingness to add more money to the Sustaining Urbana Neighborhoods grants or for the Alternative Response Program. And especially with the reason being that we didn't want our margins to be too thin when they're the widest that they have been in, I believe, the past 5 years that I recall. We passed last year's budget with, I believe, $78,000 of wiggle room. When it's for more police, we seem to be fine to get the budget down to narrow margins, but not for some of these additional community services or programs, even when it was recommended by our finance director. So I guess that is done for that week. This week I'll make one last attempt, especially that's something that was brought up tonight and has been an issue in the past that we've worked on and is not as fresh in my mind in the summer about snow removal. So I will motion to amend the budget to add a line for $100,000 for additional ADA compliance and sidewalk clearing in the city.
Second.
Sharice Hersey.
Motion made by Grace, seconded by Evans. Mary Alice.
Yeah, so I was, thank you, Grace, for bringing up what the public was talking about, because I was thinking about, is there a line item for ADA? And I thought to myself, there's probably not a line item for ADA because everything that the city does needs to be ADA compliant, so it's embedded in all of our procedures. Now, that said, we've had lots of conversations about snow removal and sidewalks. And while I am not comfortable spending $100,000 on that, because I feel like our budgets already account for making, not sidewalks, but, you know, when you go onto the road and you've got the bubbles on it, I can't remember what they're called, but there are lots of different ways in which the city on city properties tries to ensure that everybody has equal access. So I feel like we already have that built in the budget. Now on to your second question, which is snow removal. I've always thought that we could get a little creative in terms of the snow removal paths, and there's been lots of different attempts to do that. I think one of the challenges with snow removal is that usually, and Vince, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but usually it's like all hands on deck when we have a big snow event and all of Public Works goes out there to shovel city buildings, to plow the roads, to get the salt on the roads. There's a lot of staff that are on that. Now, what I do understand, and Vince, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes we also contract out with some people. I know we've had that conversation in the past when we've been talking about sidewalks, so can you?
For sidewalk snow removal, we contract out for compliance with the snow removal ordinance zones. So Urbana Public Works, we maintain adjacent to city property in some areas downtown. However, we do have a contract that's managed through code enforcement and community development for when property owners in the university in the South Philo district aren't compliant. They will deploy a contractor to clear that sidewalk, and then the appropriate fine that comes along with that.
And do you know approximately how much we spend a year on that?
I do not know of. It's managed by community development.
All right, so I guess what I'm going to say is I would be willing to support an amendment for $10,000 to remove snow in certain key areas. I would say certain roads, we would have to develop some system. I know we have like arterial roads and feeder roads and so forth, but I'd be willing to do 10,000, given that we haven't had a ton of snow events and we already have established with some contractors the ability to handle some of that.
All right, thank you. Elizabeth, go for it.
I'm sorry, this is not detailed enough for me to be able to add this to the budget. I would need to know, is it a one-time expense? Is it a recurring expense? The original motion, it wasn't clear to me if it was an expense in the operating budget or if it was maybe partly or all capital improvements related to ADA. So I would not at this point even know how to add this to the budget.
Grace, did you want to?
Thank you. Yes, I would say reoccurring, since we have less in one-time expenses. And if I may speak to the motion, we have the snow removal areas, just certain parts in town. And that, I think we could maybe be a little more timely on kind of the clearing and fining the property owners for not clearing those paths. And then also the issue is that our city plowing can pile up snow on the sidewalks. So we're actually making it worse for pedestrians along Philo Road and other parts of the city. It is extremely dangerous to be in something like a motorized scooter or a wheelchair in the snow on the street because the sidewalks aren't clear. That is a huge safety liability. My understanding is that we need money for it. When we had these conversations with residents, with city leadership, the conversation was, well, we need the money to do it. And then the budget comes around, and I do apologize for not having it on my list of things earlier, but that's kind of where this comes from, that there's the talk of we need the money to do it, so at some point we have to put our money where our mouth is to do it. And I would ask if Public Works, Vince, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but if you have anything to say about the cost of snow removal for kind of that detailed thing. If Public Works were to go through and clear actually some of the sidewalks on the intersections, either within and outside of some of those designated areas, would the cost be looking more like 10,000 or like 100,000 or something else?
I guess the best way to put it in context, and I discussed this with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission just last week, we have 150, somewhere to 150 to 160 miles of sidewalk in our community. And regionally, I know with RPC's Regional Planning Commission study, there are 15,000 curb ramps. So if maybe a third or more than a third of that is within the community, the question, the challenges that we have in the absence of a program, how do we deliver that service equitably, whether it's Philo in Florida, or whether it's someone that needs an accommodation just in a small neighborhood. So that's the challenge we're struggling with is building a program that we can manage and guarantee and deliver as a service and not just saying, yeah, we'll clear these 10 large intersections, but then that doesn't help a resident get from point A to point B in the community. So we're meeting internally as a group. We're talking with, the HRO office. We're talking with community development. We're starting meetings now in June and July to bring back an idea of what we can do, but making sure we're realistic about what we can't do, and clearing 160 miles of sidewalk and 3,000 curb cuts when, to the point that we spoke to previously, public works operations staff, that's electricians, parking meter technicians, building maintenance techs. When it snows, we all stop, and this year is the first time we've had significant snowfall recently. So we haven't seen this quantity of snow, but it can be, a week or two before we're fully stopped with our current responsibilities. Then to have to deploy resources out, it'd be a pretty significant challenge for us to do that in-house, and then to contract it out. Like I said, in the absence of a bid price and the scope of work, it's difficult to provide that information right now.
All right. Verdell, Sharice, is there anything to add to the amendment that's on the floor?
This is Sharice. I get the point that what Grace is making. However, I know and she's correct when she says that a lot of times the snow plows more snow onto the sidewalk, and nobody knows that better than me because I oftentimes have to actually shovel my own sidewalks. But the other thing that I want to express is that I don't think residents are purposefully not shoveling their snow at this time. We have a lot we have a high demographic of older people that own their own homes and are not capable, and sometimes not even able to pay someone to shovel those sidewalks. And it's a catch-22 in that kind of situation. Finding someone for not shoveling their sidewalks when they're 80 years old and on a walker themselves, may not be the right direction to go. I think this needs more discussion before we start talking about putting something aside specifically for certain stuff at this late time when it's time for us to okay the budget right now.
Verdell?
Yes, I would just like to say too. I do understand Grace's motion to be able to provide help to those who need it when it comes to snow. But as our Public Works has said, that it takes them 2 weeks just to do the regular roads. I don't think that's a sufficient amount of time to get the sidewalks and people who have disabilities taken care of as well. So I think I agree with Sharice. It needs more discussion. I think it's more than just throwing a number at it. It's also logistically, how can we make this happen? So for now, I'm going to say no.
All right, thank you. So, Clerk, I'll ask that you call the roll on the amendment to add a $100,000 to the ADA compliance snow removal.
Councilmember Wu?
No.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
No.
Councilmember Wilkin?
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
No.
Mayor Williams?
All right, no. And that amendment fails. All right, now we're back to the original amendment, which was made by Councilmember Jones, seconded by Mary Alice. Any further discussion? Grace?
I just want to say kind of bigger picture. support and hope we can keep working towards as much transparency as we can have here, with the budget being, as people say, a moral document. This is, I think, what reflects our values and priorities as a city. I still don't understand the sewer and stormwater money going into the general fund, not really seeing where that's itemized as requested. I don't know that there's much to be done on that at this point. Continued to be disappointed by the lack of support for additions to the budget by other council members. It is unfortunate that we only have 2 weeks to discuss the budget on the floor, but that is the way of things. So, yeah, feels pretty ineffective to make any change in the system that continues to go in the directions it's going regardless.
Mary Ellis.
Yeah, so I have just something small that I wanted to share. Sharice and I were talking about this. I am very happy to see money specifically allocated to the Philo area, because I think that is really needed. And I know that the mayor had talked about that being one of his priorities, so I'm glad to see that in there. So what I wanted to bring up, and this is the item that Sharice and I were talking about, was, in addition to all this study and how to revitalize the area, I feel like we should not forget arts. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if you look around the community right now, a lot of our utility boxes in the central areas have art on them. I am not aware of anything on Philo or in North Urbana that does. I could be wrong. Somebody can tell me that I'm wrong. But what I'm saying is that place also needs to be prioritized in terms of what it looks like. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's a very small thing. I don't have a budget amendment. It was just a thought that I wanted to share.
Thank you. That's hilarious. All right. Any further discussion? Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. That passes. All right. Mr. Jones, the floor is yours.
Okay, last item of business, ordinance number 2026-06-018, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 10, fiscal year 2025 to 2026 estimates.
Second.
Motion made by Jones, seconded by Wu. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. That passes. All right, thank you. All right, we will now hear reports of special committee, which there are none. So we will move on to reports of officers. Is there anything, Mr. White? No? All right. Sorry, I didn't mean, should have let you answer first. I'm sorry. All right, we'll now move to discussion, surveillance ordinance. Council, is there anything to discuss tonight? Grace.
I think just that last week we had talked about this coming back in July, where we have hopefully a little more time. I didn't know if we wanted to talk about trying to set a date, like a special cow on the 13th, if we have a council meeting that might be short.
Raphael?
Yeah, I mean, we would be open to that if that's testing. Yeah, we'd be open to that if that's the council's direction.
I guess throwing out if we wanted to discuss a date, or I'm happy to request that. Don't know if we need a second, or actually if that's a whole special meeting, would maybe be a different system. I don't know how to request a whole special meeting.
It's a great question. I don't have that answer.
Yeah, I think you need 2 council members, or we can just have it done internally with the mayor's approval.
We can, if I can get back to you, I'll discuss this with our team and we can touch base on it, so.
Awesome, thank you.
No problem. All right, we will now move to mayoral appointment. Where everybody go? All right, we'll move on.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Could we do these in reverse order?
Absolutely. That's a great idea. See, Mr. Quisenberry just saved y'all because listen here, I know you've seen the agenda. All right, we will start. We will start with our Ward 5 council member appointment. I am recommending, and I won't keep you all long, I am recommending Stephanie Renee Cockrell to fill the seat for Chandra Bishop's Ward 5 council seat. So at this time, I'll ask Ms. Stephanie to come up to the front. And yeah, we can, I guess I'll need to entertain. I was gonna give her the moment to speak, but yes.
Can I make a motion to extend the meeting until 10:40? Oh, do we have to do 30 minutes? We've done it.
We can do 10:45 if we get done, right?
Motion to extend it till 11. If we get done earlier, we leave.
Okay.
All right.
All right, good idea. I'll move that we extend the meeting till 11.
Second.
Second.
All right, motion made by Mary Alice, seconded by Quisenberry. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 11 p.m. it is.
All right.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, before we get started, I'm going to open the floor. Ms. Cockrell, if you have anything to share with the council.
I just wanted to say, first of all, just thank you all. Thank you all for the opportunity to get the chance to even be in this place. I am definitely ready to serve and prepared to be the support that our city needs in this space. I understand that accepting this seat is not just simply accepting a title. I understand that it is accepting a responsibility to listen, to learn, to show up, to help make difficult decisions, and to serve the people of Urbana. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit in the seat of that was an amazing woman and a friend of mine that I believed in, and I hope I can do this any justice and service. I'm grateful for the beautiful 6 girls, my 6 reasons, who have been my greatest teachers, have taught me how to advocate and how to sacrifice and to be the woman that I need to be in this community and to serve this community well. The lessons that I've learned in my life and in my business in this community, I bring to this seat. I'm happy to be a person that will be not only here with you all, but also standing in the gap for people you may never see. And so I am definitely looking forward to that. My experiences have taught me that policies are more than just writing on paper, and that policies are very important because they affect real people, real families, real businesses, real children, and real futures. And so I am definitely looking forward to bringing my experiences to this table and being the leader, adding to this team to be the leader that this team needs, an additional leader to this team. I love Urbana. I love the people in our community, and I believe in what we can accomplish when we listen to one another, work together, and choose people over politics. So I'm looking forward to serving with you all.
Thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to be recognized so I can make a motion.
Yes. I am so sorry, Quisenberry.
I move approval of the appointment of Stephanie Renee Cockrell to the Urbana Ward 5 council seat for a term ending April 6, 2027.
Second.
All right, motion made by Quisenberry, seconded by Wu. Is there any further discussion? Anyone on the phone? All right, I will just say I am looking forward to working alongside you. I have appreciated your voice and your work for this community, and just looking forward to seeing the things that you bring, the voice that you bring to our community and to this council. So thank you for taking the risk and jumping out there. So looking forward to getting to work.
Thank you.
All right, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Yes.
All right, congratulations. So come on up to the front. We're going to get you sworn in. All right, mic check, mic check. All right. Thought I was going to spit a verse, didn't you? All right, so raise your right hand and repeat after me. You state your name. I,
Stephanie Renee Cochran,
having been appointed to the office of
having been appointed to the office of
Alderperson, Ward 5 in the city of Urbana,
Alderperson, Ward 5 in the city of Urbana,
in the county of Champaign, Illinois, aforesaid,
in the county of Champaign, Illinois, aforesaid,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the state of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Alderperson, Ward 5,
of the office of Alderperson, Ward 5,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. All right. Yeah, now I almost failed us there. All right. So now we will go into mayoral appointments. So I'll read these off individually-ish. First, we'll go into board and commission appointments. First, we have Traffic Commission, both Justin Swinford and Verdell Jones. The third, which is ongoing, we have Police Pension Board, Mr. Don Ho, with the term ending June 30th, 2028. We have Zoning Board of Appeals, Mark Weinberg, with the term ending June 30th, 2029. And we have Human Rights Commission, Ms. Katrina Kendall, effective July 1st, 2026, with the term ending July 30th, 2029. Yes, sir.
I can make a motion for
Please
those.
do. Yes, sir. Mr.
So
Quisenberry.
I move approval of appointments to the Traffic Commission of Justin Swinford and Verdell Jones III, appointment to the Police Pension Fund Board of Don Ho for a term ending June 30th, 2028, and Zoning Board of Appeals for Mark Winterberg, term ending June 30th, 2029, and for the Human Rights Commission, Karina Kendall, effective July 1 with a term ending June 30th, 2029.
Second.
All right, motion made by Quisenberry, seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion? No? All right, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Yes.
Awesome. Congratulations. All right, we will now move to boards and commission reappointments. First, we have Human Rights Commission, Shalini Smith, the term ending June 30th, 2029. Sustainability Advisory Commission, Andrew Stump, with the term ending June 30th, 2029. Luke Westalker, with the term ending June 30th, 2029. Have the Urbana Free Library Board of Trustees, Deb Newell, with the term ending June 30th, 2029, and Mina Malik, with the term ending June 30th, 2029. We also have Tree Commission, Carol Osberger, with the term ending June 30th, 2029, and Urbana Arts and Culture Commission, Abby Harris, with the term ending June 30th, 2029.
I move that we approve all those items that the mayor just listed for the board and commission reappointments.
Motion made by Mary Alice. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Quisenberry. All right. Discussion. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
All right. Congratulations again to everyone. With no further business before this body, this meeting is adjourned.